Chapter 4276. Since there was Yuan Tongtian, there would be a demon disciple for the sutra-seeking extreme bliss. The demon who was destined to be subdued. His tragic fate would be changed. He would not be beaten by others. He would be subdued by others. However, there was a problem again. The demons were unhappy. This was already agreed upon. How could it be changed just like that? Were they bullying the demons for being inhumane? The Immortal Palace was in a dilemma. There was only so much merit. If there was one more person to share, everyone would have less. The Immortal Palace felt that the Buddhist sect might not be willing. However, to the surprise of the Immortal Palace and the demons, the Buddhist sect made a rare concession in the face of the demons' persistence. The Buddhist sect did not arrange for the Bodhisattva to perform the sutra-seeking extreme bliss. There were still 4 of them. However, the Buddhist sect had a condition. This demon disciple could not be a demon from the 1,000-demon sacred realm. The Buddhist sect's reasoning was reasonable. With one less Buddhist disciple, Chunzang's merit would be doubled. The demons already had a disciple. Of course, they could not share any extra merit. Otherwise, wouldn't the demons benefit the most from the sutra-seeking extreme bliss? It was unknown if there was something fishy between the Dragon Island and the Buddhist sect, or if fate had really landed on the Dragon Island. On the 3 continents, other than the Immortal Palace, the Thunder Temple, and the Great Sage Temple, there was only the Dragon Island left. The 3rd disciple was given to the Dragon Island. Of course, the Dragon Island could not send a dragon to be Chunzang's disciple. Therefore, the title was given to the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. There were many dragons in the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. However, there were not many who could match the status of Sun Zihan. There was no need to mention the princes of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. None of them would lower their status to be a disciple of a Buddhist sect's bodhisattva. The Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas could not send out an ordinary dragon general. They had to send a leader of the dragon guards. Just as the Immortal Palace was waiting with interest for the Dragon Palace to send out a disciple, Ao Feng appeared. The 10th prince of the Dragon Palace of the East Sea. Everyone knew that the dragon had 9 sons. Each Dragon Palace only had 9 princes. It was impossible to have one more. This was the legacy of the dragons for many years. However, the Dragon Palace of the East Sea had this 10th prince. The Immortal Palace didn't know how the 10th crown prince came about, but from the Dragon Island's Book of Dragons, it was recorded long ago. It was something that happened before the sutra-seeking of extreme bliss. In other words, Ao Feng's birth had nothing to do with the sutra-seeking of extreme bliss. Since the 10th prince had nothing to do with nirvana scripture-seeking, the Immortal Palace immediately understood the reason why the 10th prince revealed his identity. Whether it was the Dragon Island or the East Sea Dragon Palace, one of them must have found the Lane Temple and given Ao Feng the opportunity to appear in the 3 continents, giving him the opportunity to be recognized by the dragon tribe. Therefore, the Immortal Palace didn't pursue the matter further, and agreed to let Ao Feng be the last disciple of the sutra-seeking extreme bliss. Moreover, the Immortal Palace didn't propose any other conditions. However, when Ao Feng appeared in front of her, Zhenhan's jaw almost dropped to the ground. Where did the Dragon General and the 10th Prince of the Dragon King go? Why is there only one dragon horse? Didn't they say that Chuanzong could only rely on his own strength to travel from Longevity Town to Lane Temple, and then back to Longevity Town from Lane Temple? The East Sea Dragon Palace sent a dragon horse over. It could not carry Chuanzong, nor could it fight. How could it split the merit? Could it be that they were planning to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? Unfortunately, although this dragon horse Zhenfeng was very lively and often caused trouble, he was very tight-lipped about his origin, and even what had happened. No matter how much Zhenhan asked, he still didn't get an answer. After a long time, Zhenhan also lost his patience. After all, the dragon horse Zhenfeng wasn't the only one who was slacking. Wasn't he also hiding behind Zhenkong and slacking off? It was enough to have Zhenkong as the eldest senior brother in the sutra-seeking extreme bliss. Who cares what Zhenfeng thought? However, when the 4 of them arrived at the Lane Temple and saw the Mahayana scriptures such as the Nirvana Sutra, the Bodhisattva Sutra, and other Mahayana scriptures to Chuanzong, Zhenhan suddenly understood everything. He was instantly filled with admiration for the Lane Temple and the Dragon Palace. Because the Lane Temple had clearly stated that the Mahayana Sutra was the breath of the Buddha Lord. No utensils could taint it. Therefore, the Qiankuan pouch, the Qiankuan bracelet, and the dragon shell couldn't be used. They could only be carried by the dragon clan with the bloodline of the heavenly dragon. His grandmother. What kind of reason was this? This was clearly giving merit to Dragon Horse Zhenfeng. Unfortunately, this Dragon Horse Zhenfeng seemed to be a simpleton. He didn't understand anything and only wanted to carry Chuanzong. Zhenhan wished he could knock Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's head on behalf of the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. Did you know that your father had done so much for you? Today, Chuanzong was forced to tell the truth. Looking at Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's attitude, he didn't seem to care at all. Zhenhan couldn't help but despise him. However, Zhenhan couldn't help but defend Zhenfeng. After all, two people slacking off. It was better than one person being inconspicuous. As for Chuanzong's origin and the relationship between Chuanzong and Zhenkong, even though Zhenhan had followed them for more than 200 years, he still didn't understand. It wasn't only Zhenhan who was confused. Even the immortal palace was shrouded in fog. No one could see the truth. Long before Chuanzong revealed the Buddhist decree, or even when Chuanzong might reveal the Buddhist decree, the immortal palace had already begun to investigate Chuanzong's origin. However, the result left the immortal palace very puzzled. Chuanzong was like a Buddha descending from the heavens, riding on the wooden basin of nirvana. Before the small golden river of the Golden Mountain Temple, Chuanzong's shadow didn't seem to exist in the pure land of ultimate bliss. Since then, Chuanzong's shadow seemed to have covered the entire pure land of ultimate bliss. Moreover, everything was seen clearly by the immortal palace. There weren't any traces of the Mahavairakana revered Buddha doing anything. Chuanzong appeared out of thin air. Of course, not to mention the immortal palace, even Zhenhan didn't believe that Chuanzong had no relationship with the Mahavairakana revered Buddha. Otherwise, how could such great merit be given to Chuanzong? However, the experience of the past 200 years told Zhenhan the truth. Chuanzong didn't know the truth behind this pure land of ultimate bliss. This wasn't the final truth. The truth that Zhenhan didn't understand the most was that Chuanzong didn't seem to recognize Zhenkong, who had risked his life to protect her. Not only did Chuanzong treat Zhenkong, Zhenhan, and Zhenfeng equally, he was also very dissatisfied with Zhenkong killing monsters and Taoist cultivators. Since a long time ago, he had been talking nonstop about chasing Zhenkong away. Zhenhan was about to go crazy. For the sake of Zhenkong, the Buddhist sect, the immortal palace, and the monster race had engaged in a game. Dragon Island had even joined in. Now that the candidate for the pure land of ultimate bliss had been decided, you actually wanted to change it. Did you think that you had the final say in this pure land of ultimate bliss? Moreover, if Zhenkong was chased away, the heavy responsibility of eliminating monsters and demons would fall on Zhenhan's shoulders. How could Zhenhan be willing? Although the outcome of the pure land of ultimate bliss had been decided, no one could guarantee the process. Anything that one worried about would definitely happen. Didn't you see how the powerful Qiankong was almost killed by the Taoist cultivators he had arranged? Zhenhan couldn't guarantee that the Taoist cultivators sent out from the Penglai immortal realm wouldn't have the guts to kill her when they saw her, a Confucian cultivator, before the immortal palace made their move. In particular, a secret that I won't tell you if you're not familiar with him, had suddenly spread throughout the 3 continents. It was said that Chuanzong was the reincarnation of a bodhisattva from the Buddhist kingdom. Anyone who could eat a piece of Chuanzong's flesh would gain immortality. Human cultivators were still fine, but the monsters in the 1,000-demon sacred realm couldn't resist this temptation. One after another, they rushed out from their secluded lairs, wanting to realize their beautiful dream of immortality. Although he didn't know where this rumor came from, the effect of this rumor was obvious. Without the immortal palace and the Thunder Temple urging the great sage hall to create a few demons and ghosts, the real calamities came one after another. Although the immortal palace and Thunder Temple's defenses were tight, if a monster like Zhenkong could become their disciple, then a monster like the Phantom Beast could also get close. If it wasn't for the powerful eldest senior brother Zhenkong blocking in front of her, Zhenhan might have died several times already. Therefore, even if Zhenhan knew that Zhen Kong looked down on her, she still tried her best to protect Zhen Kong, helping Chuanzong, who only wanted to pursue the truth of Buddhism, to see the reality clearly. Seeing that Chuanzong and Zhen Kong had a falling out again, and Zhen Kong really had the momentum of not daring to do anything, Zhenhan gave Zhenfeng a look and hurriedly said, "Master, please calm down first. This is all my disciple's fault. Eldest senior brother went to look for food for you, but we actually squabbled on the side, causing you to be in danger. Come, quickly try this peach, it's really delicious." "That's right," Master Dragon Horse Zhenfeng also said. "Eldest senior brother has worked hard and made great contributions. For the past 200 years, haven't we relied on eldest senior brother's abilities to safely reach this place? Seeing that the Western Paradise is about to end, and we have to return to the hidden immortal continent, how can you bear to let eldest senior brother leave? Just now, not to mention eldest senior brother, even my heart was about to jump out. After all, that phantom beast had already pounced on Master's head. In just a few breaths, Master will really enter the cycle of reincarnation. Isn't eldest senior brother anxious to save Master? Of course, we Buddhist disciples cannot stain our hands with blood. Eldest senior brother is also in the wrong. Look, even if eldest senior brother doesn't say anything now, he is already regretting it." It was rare for two disobedient disciples to speak up for Zhen Kong, so Chuanzong's heart moved a little. He took the peach that Zhenhan passed to him, and took a small bite. A sweet peach juice entered his mouth, and Chuanzong's anger subsided a little. However, when he looked at Zhen Kong again, he saw that Zhen Kong was looking at the sky, seemingly in the direction of the Golden Mountain Temple. He didn't know what Zhen Kong was thinking. Although Zhen Kong didn't say anything, the regret in Zhen Kong's words clearly didn't exist. Chuanzong opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he had already said enough in the past 200 years. What was the use of him saying anything more? For a moment his heart felt stifled. He wasn't an idiot. 200 years was enough for him to see some of the truth about the Western Paradise scripture seeking. However, he didn't care. After all, the Mahayana Buddhist scripture he obtained was a real thing. Being able to let the Buddhist sect's Buddhist light illuminate the longevity town was his greatest hope for this trip. However, what was his greatest hope? In this world, there was probably no one who could understand it. Not even Mahavairakana. Chapter 4277. Thinking of this, Chuanzong lost his appetite. He raised his head and looked towards the west. Other than a tall snow mountain, there was only the gloomy sky. Snowflakes were still falling from the red clouds, showing no signs of stopping. The gloomy weather was a day that made people angry. "Let's go." Chuanzong finished the peach in a few bites and carefully buried the peach pit in the snow. "Master, you should eat a few more." Zhenhan chased after him and said, "There are so many peaches. If you don't eat them, wouldn't it be a waste? You guys eat them or leave them for the next meal." Chuanzong didn't even turn his head. He leaned on his staff and walked forward. Zhenhan faintly smiled and nodded. "Yes, master." After saying that, he waved his hand and the peach tree immediately landed on Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's back. It smashed the tarpaulin, as if the book under the tarpaulin wasn't the scripture. However, Longma Zhenfeng wasn't going to let it go. He jumped and tried to throw the peach tree off while cursing. "Damn it, I'm still the Eastern Sea's 10th prince. How can you throw a peach tree on my back? You clearly have your own Qianquan bag. Can't you just put it in there?" "What do you know?" Seeing that Chuanzong had exposed the matter, Zhenhan no longer concealed it and scolded. "This is the food for the next meal. If you don't carry it, who will? If I put it on your back, it will be your merit. If I put it in my Qianquan bag, it will be dog shit. All of you shut up." Zhen Kong was very impatient and scolded. "Why aren't you hurrying? Do you believe that I won't kill you with my staff? Damn it, why don't you try and kill me? Even this monk doesn't dare to say such words." Dragon Horse Zhenfeng immediately stopped arguing with the peach tree and turned to Zhen Kong. Why would Zhen Kong care about him? He still carried the magic wand on his shoulder, and lazily followed behind Chuanzong. "Damned fire ape!" Dragon Horse Zhenfeng cursed. Seeing that Zhenhan had also followed, he added, Damned Confucian cultivator. Unfortunately, scolding was just scolding. After scolding, draconic horse Zhenfeng still raised its hooves and followed behind the three. The snowy mountain looked very close, but it took them more than 10 days to reach it. In these 10 days, it was snowing heavily and there was no sign of stopping. Zhenhan raised his eyes to look at the snowy mountain, then turned back to look at the footprints on the snowy ground. The further the footprints were, the more unclear they were. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Was it worth it to walk such a short distance for more than 10 days? In the past, as long as he moved his body, the Great Snow Mountain would have already been under his feet. But today he actually walked over with his feet. However, when Zhenhan turned his head around, he saw that there was no longer a smooth path ahead. There was only a small path leading to the Great Snow Mountain. Zhenhan felt bitter in his heart. How could he not know that this was another test? In his heart he was already cursing. Motherfucker, which shameless baldy from the Buddhist sect gave this test? This Great Snow Mountain. Could it be that this daddy has to climb up step by step? Zhenhan could only curse in his heart. It was impossible for him to not climb up, because the sutra-seeking path in nirvana wasn't purely about seeking Mahayana Buddhist scriptures. The Immortal Palace also arranged for Zhenhan to spread Confucian teachings in the nirvana world. Everywhere they went, Chun Feng would preach Buddhism and discuss with the local Buddhas. As for Zhenhan, he would take out the Confucian scrolls that he had already prepared and give them to the local villagers, especially those young children. Zhenhan would also tell them some stories about Confucian teachings. As for the effect of these scrolls and Confucian teachings, Zhenhan didn't know. Especially in many places in the nirvana world, Buddhism was highly respected. Very few people were interested in Zhenhan's Confucian scrolls. However, Zhenhan still had to brace himself and do this seemingly useless thing. It was also at this time that Zhenhan especially admired the Buddhas who preached Buddhism in the Immortal Town and other places hundreds of years ago. Your grandmother, sure enough. There was no need for Zhenhan to say a word. That dragon horse Zhenfeng flew into a rage. Monk, could it be that you want me to drag these bullshit things up the Great Snow Mountain? Chunzong raised his head and narrowed his eyes as he looked at the Great Snow Mountain that was almost unreachable. Then he looked at the snowfield with no way out. There was no fear in his mind. In 200 years, the entire nirvana world had been trampled under his feet. Would he still care about this small Great Snow Mountain? He simply turned a deaf ear to Zhenfeng's roar. He lifted his foot and firmly stepped on the path that was almost inaudible. I say, monk, you really want to go up? Dragon horse Zhenfeng was silly. Although he complained, how could he not go up with his strength? He was just afraid of being tired and lazy. But Chunzong was different. He was very clear that Chunzong didn't have a trace of psychokinesis and didn't know any Buddhist techniques. If he wanted to climb up the Great Snow Mountain, it would be 10,000 times more dangerous than him. Master naturally wants to go up. Chunzong didn't turn his head and replied as if it was a matter of course. If you don't want to go up, then you don't have to. Damn it. Dragon horse Zhenfeng wanted to say something, but when he saw Zhenfeng follow Chunzong and Zhenhan hurriedly walk past him, leaving behind a mysterious smile, what else could he say? He could only mutter, I don't believe that this Great Snow Mountain can't kill a monk like you then. He carried the Buddhist scriptures and stepped onto the path with difficulty. Boom! Just as the four of them stepped onto the path, a thunderclap sounded from the western sky, shaking the four of them to raise their heads. High up in the sky, tiny lightning threads were like hundreds of millions of dragons cruising in the sky. In the center of the lightning threads, there was an abnormal twisting vortex that was either elongated or extended. It even condensed into a strange black hole. In just a few breaths of time, the lightning threads expanded again and rushed towards the Great Snow Mountain. It was like a thunderstorm that covered the entire sky. At the same time, as the thunderstorm roared, the twisting vortex suddenly overflowed like bubbles. A few dozens, hundreds, and finally tens of thousands of vortexes, spinning rapidly in the thunderstorm. These vortexes were of different sizes and depths, and even their twisting was different. Disciple, what's going on? Chunzong was surprised and turned to ask Zhenkong naturally. How would I know? A hint of surprise flashed in Zhenkong's eyes, and he suddenly felt excited. He didn't feel this excited even when he kowtowed to Mahavarakana in the Thunder Temple. However, he still replied coldly, "Even if the great saint of the demon clan came, you would still have to walk up the Great Snow Mountain step by step." Chunzong felt disappointed for no reason, and was about to walk up the mountain. However, at this moment, at the peak of the Great Snow Mountain, a whimpering sound was also heard. Then, in the sky above the Great Snow Mountain, layers of strange green light appeared and rushed into the void like an umbrella. Then, the lightning that appeared seemed like a dragon that smelled blood, crossing the space and pouncing on the green light. When the thunderbolts fell into the green light, the thunderbolts that filled the sky suddenly disappeared. Layers of golden light sparkled like the setting sun shining on the surface of the water. As the golden light gradually grew larger, it looked like dragon scales that covered the sky. "Everyone look! Lord Dragon God has descended?" Dragon Horse Zhenfeng walked at the back and couldn't help but exclaim loudly, afraid that Zhenhan couldn't hear him. However, before he could finish speaking, "Namo Maitreya Buddha, Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Dipankara Buddha," the chanting of 10,000 Buddhas appeared again, and the dragon scales turned into a bright Buddhist light. Not only did it illuminate the sky, but it also illuminated the Great Snow Mountain and the snowy plains. At the end of the Buddhist light, countless jade talismans appeared. Within the jade talismans, celestial maidens, celestial flowers, celestial dragons, and various Buddhist fruits appeared one after another. An indescribable Buddhist aura slowly covered the entire Great Snow Mountain. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Seeing this strange scene, the surprise in Chun Zhang's eyes became even more intense. He chanted a Buddhist mantra and knelt down, kowtowing toward the west. "Damn it!" Zhenhan narrowed his eyes and looked at this strange scene as if he was admiring the scenery. However, he felt disdain in his heart. What is the Thunder Temple planning? They haven't even reached the Longevity Town, so why did they come with such a big formation? Could it be that this Great Snow Mountain has some secret that I, a Confucian cultivator, don't know? Monk, what's going on? Longma Zhenfeng was extremely disappointed and shouted, "How did my Lord Dragon God become a Buddhist kingdom?" Not to mention the four of them being inexplicably surprised. Even a bodhisattva sitting cross-legged on a six-tusked white elephant in a dilapidated small temple halfway up the Great Snow Mountain also had a look of surprise on his face. This bodhisattva was wearing a 5 Buddha golden crown and a kasaya. His left hand was holding a scepter and his expression was solemn. Wasn't he Samantabhadra Bodhisattva? However, when the dragon scales in the sky turned into Buddhist light, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's face was filled with ecstasy. He almost couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Namo Maitreya Buddha. I really didn't expect that disciple's guess was actually true. Buddha Lord really came to this world." When disciple saw Buddha Lord's body that day, I was still hesitating. Not only did Buddha Lord's cultivation method change, he also didn't have any impression of his previous life. Even Mahavarakana was unable to see through Buddha Lord's origin, and was unable to confirm his identity. If disciple wasn't merciful enough to see Buddha Lord's physical appearance, how could disciple recognize Buddha Lord's current physical body? Now, it seems that Buddha Lord must have encountered a great problem during his reincarnation, so he had no choice but to erase his own reincarnation imprint. Fortunately, disciple was arranged by Buddha Lord to come to this world, and found the little exquisite temple of Tantric Buddhism that was built tens of thousands of years ago in Lane Temple. Disciple knew that this was the key to Buddha Lord's awakening, so I came here first. Buddha Lord's current physical body hasn't even stepped into the little exquisite temple, yet he was able to trigger the Buddhist kingdom's vision. This little exquisite temple must be where Buddha Lord's physical body is awakening. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Disciple has gone through untold hardships to welcome the awakening of the future Buddha Lord's reincarnation. Disciple's great wish can finally be realized. Chapter 4278. After Samantabhadra Bodhisattva finished speaking, he put his palms together and bowed in the direction of Lane Temple. He floated down from the 6-tusked white elephant and patted the white elephant. The white elephant flew into the sky and concealed itself. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva landed in front of the main hall of Shaolinglong Temple. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva released his Buddhist awareness and scanned the surroundings of Shaolinglong Temple. After pondering for a moment, he walked to the main hall and sat down cross-legged. He faced the statue of Mithra Buddha and lowered his head to recite scriptures. Not long after, 2 strands of Yuan Shin and a ray of clear light swept over. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't even open his eyes and didn't stop reciting the scriptures. He was very clear that this was the Yuan Shin of Zhenkong and the others. However, with the strength of Zhenkong and the others, it was impossible for them to detect the existence of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. After an unknown period of time, he heard a series of dull knocks on the door. Chuanzong's voice also sounded. Is there a senior brother here? Disciple is Chuanzong of Nirvana Sutra Seeking. I'm passing by today and it's already late. I hope senior brother can stay here for the night. Monk Zhenkong's voice sounded at an untimely time. I already told you, this is a deserted temple. There's no one here. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva floated out of the main hall. His body flashed with Buddhist light and turned into an old monk. This old monk wore a strange orange-red outfit and a red hat that looked like a coxcomb. The old monk that Samantabhadra Bodhisattva transformed into also had dark red skin and a face full of wrinkles under a pair of snow-white eyebrows. His squinted eyes seemed to be submerged in the wrinkles of time. This old monk was actually very similar to what Xiao Hua had seen in the past. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva stood in front of the main hall and waved his hand unhurriedly. The broom that had been thrown next to the water tank in the corner for hundreds of years fell into his hand. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva looked at the temple gate with interest, and then looked up at the sky. At this time, the tens of thousands of vortexes in the sky had exploded. Countless Buddha's light had shrouded the area for tens of thousands of miles. Layers of Buddha's light overlapped, and no one could tell how many layers there were. And within this Buddhist light, countless Buddhist kingdoms began to gradually form. Strands of faith power began to overflow within these Buddhist kingdoms. However, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was a little puzzled. Within the layers of Buddha's light, there was a similar vortex. These vortexes overlapped with the Buddha's light. The layers of vortexes were hidden behind the Buddha's light and looked rather strange. However, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't have time to look at it carefully. The door of the Shaolin Long Temple was once again pushed open. Zhenkong's surprised voice rang out. Why is there an old monk here? Could he be a demon? Following Zhenkong's words, he strode past Chunzeng and stood in front of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. He waved his magic wand in the air and looked at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva vigilantly. Bullshit. What demon? Draconic Horse Shenfeng's voice rang out. In your eyes, there are only 2 types of creatures in this world. One type won't harm a monk, and the other type will harm a monk. Do you think an old monk can harm a monk? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't care about the quarrel between the two. He only held a broom and swept the snow on the ground. The snow had already been swept away when he entered the Shaolin Long Temple. Now he only swept away a thin layer of snow. Zhenkong's eyes glowed with golden light. He took a closer look but couldn't see anything. However, just as he was about to raise his magic wand, his eyes suddenly lit up as if he had seen something. The corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile. Then he placed the magic wand on his shoulder and moved to the side. Elder seeing Zhenkong move aside, Chunzong quickly walked over and put his palms together. Disciple Chunzong wanted to greet him, but Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't seem to see him. He turned around and swept his gaze elsewhere. Chunzong helplessly walked forward and grabbed the broom. He smiled and said, "Old master, you're old. Rest on the side. As for the rest, disciple will help you sweep." O little monk Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's body trembled. He looked up at Chunzong and said, "All right, since you want to sweep, then sweep more." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva let go of the broom and looked at Zhenkong. His squinted eyes suddenly widened. He pointed at Xiankong in shock and shouted, "Demon, demon." "Hee, if I'm a demon, then what are you?" Although Zhenkong saw something, he still didn't show any respect. He rudely retorted, "Ah, he's a demon too?" Draconic Horse Zhenfeng was shocked and hurriedly took a few steps back. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's face turned pale. He pulled on Chunzang's sleeve and shouted, "What? Little monk, your horse can speak human language? It's a demon too?" Chunzong held the broom with one hand and supported the old monk with the other. He replied with a slightly loud voice, "Old master, don't be afraid. This draconic horse is this poor monk's disciple. Although it has the appearance of a draconic horse, it's actually a dragon. It's of the same bloodline as my Buddhist sect's guardian heavenly dragon." Monk draconic horse Zhenfeng was unhappy and shouted, "How can your Buddhist sect's heavenly dragon be compared to my Dragon Island's bloodline?" Namo Umitba the old monk was still afraid. His withered vine-like hand tightly held onto Chunzong and shouted, "Since it's a dragon, then it's a demon. I remember that when I was young, my house was next to a river. Dragons would often appear there. Every year, they would eat little boy." That old man draconic horse Zhenfeng was even more unhappy. He almost jumped up and shouted, "That's a flood dragon. To put it bluntly, it's a python spirit. How can it be compared to this old man?" Namo Umitba the old monk's face turned pale. He hid beside Chunzong and secretly looked at draconic horse Zhenfeng and said, "You still say that he's your disciple? Look at him. He doesn't even call you master. How can he be your disciple? Such a disciple. What do you want him for?" "Damn it," draconic horse Zhenfeng angrily said. "What does it have to do with you whether I call you master or not?" Zhenfeng Chunzong finally couldn't bear it and shouted, "Go outside the temple and wait. Don't scare this old man." Draconic horse Zhenfeng smiled and said, "If master doesn't worry about this disciple carrying the scripture outside, then this disciple will go, master. You don't need to worry about this." Zhen Han, who had been watching from the side for a long time, immediately walked over and said with a smile, "This disciple will take the scripture from junior brother's back and then let senior brother kick him down the mountain." Zhen Han draconic horse Zhenfeng was somewhat flustered. "You dare? I'll give you 10 times the courage. Why wouldn't I dare?" Zhen Han replied with interest, "You should ask senior brother this question." After saying this, Zhen Han half-jokingly pulled draconic horse Zhenfeng towards a corner of the small temple, away from the old monk. As for Zhen Kong, he had already jumped onto the wall of the small temple. He raised his eyes and looked at the Buddhist light and rosy clouds in the sky. He listened to the inexplicable rumbling sounds with an expectant look on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. Hee, I've let this old man see a joke." Chunzong smiled and helped the old monk to the side of the main hall. He used his kasaya to clean the dust on the steps and invited the old monk to sit down. He said, "These disciples of this poor monk are naughty and often inadvertently violate the precepts. This poor monk usually doesn't teach them well. This is all this poor monk's fault. However, these disciples of this poor monk have good hearts. The secular world once said that if one doesn't teach well, it's the father's fault. If one doesn't teach strictly, the teacher will be lazy. You are indeed not a qualified teacher." The old monk sat down, his eyes still narrowed as he indifferently replied. Chunzong could only bitterly smile. After the old monk sat down, he took a broom and began to sweep the floor of the exquisite temple. It was just like the day when Xiao Hua came to the exquisite temple. Before the Buddhist light descended, there was heavy snow. No matter how he swept, he couldn't catch up with the falling snow. After the Buddhist light descended, the dark clouds had already been dispersed and the snowflakes had already stopped fluttering. Perhaps there were still some snowflakes that were unwilling to be left out in the air to join in the fun. However, it was much easier for Chunzong to sweep. In just half a meal's time, Chunzong had already cleaned the entire courtyard. After he gathered all the snow at the foot of the wall, he very naturally picked up the wooden cover of the water jar at the foot of the wall, as if he wanted to drink some water. However, when he picked up the wooden cover, the water jar was empty. There wasn't a single drop of water. Chunzong couldn't help but be stunned. At this moment, a bitter smile appeared on the face of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. He could casually sweep the snow in the courtyard and make it look like someone regularly cleaned the courtyard. However, he didn't drink water. Why would he think of putting water in the water jar? Zhenkong Chunzong was only stunned for a moment before he raised his head and shouted, "Go and help this old man get some water. On such a snowy day, I'm afraid it's not convenient for him to get water." "Yes." Master Zhenkong didn't hesitate at all, and immediately answered. At this moment, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled and said, The water of the mortal world can only quench the thirst of the stomach. How can the thirst of the Sarira be quenched? Chunzong smiled and said, Buddha's words are naturally the rain of the Sarira. As long as one listens to Buddha's mantra at all times, the Sarira will naturally not be thirsty. Namo Maitreya Samantabhadra Bodhisattva put his palms together and bowed respectfully. You're right. However, what if the Sarira doesn't know how to drink water and listen? What should we do? Enlightened Chunzong didn't hesitate. Enlighten and enlighten. Follow thousands of miles without fear. Take one step at a time, and you'll naturally see Buddha's true appearance. All right, please. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva took a deep breath and stepped aside. He raised his hand and gestured. Please take the first step to see Buddha. Chapter 4279. As Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Nanwu stepped aside, the previously closed main hall of the exquisite temple suddenly opened. Although the light of Buddha filled the sky and enveloped the entire Great Snow Mountain, it was pitch black inside the main hall. Nothing could be seen, let alone the true appearance of the Buddha Lord. Seeing that the old monk had suddenly regained consciousness and was not as muddle-headed as before, Chunqing was stunned. He looked at the open door of the main hall with hesitation, not daring to act rashly. However, he only took a glance and a sense of mission, belonging, and familiarity that he hadn't felt for a long time came from the pitch-black main hall. Something inexplicable struck his heart and lungs, striking his memories. It was as if everything he pursued was inside, as if the true face of Buddha was hidden in the darkness. Chuanzong couldn't help but take a step forward. Master Zhenkong panicked when he saw this. He hurriedly jumped down from the high wall and blocked Chuanzong's path. Although he could see the true face of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, the main hall was covered by a layer of extremely mysterious things. His primary consciousness couldn't penetrate it, and his clear vision couldn't see it either. How could he let Chuanzong enter without worry? Even if it was Samantabhadra Bodhisattva who let Chuanzong in. Chuanzong stopped when he heard this. He looked at the old monk and then at Zhenkong and asked, What's wrong? Isn't it just a main hall? What's the danger? Zhenkong said solemnly, Master, although it's a main hall, I'm still worried. With my ability, I can't see what's inside. If you agree, can I go in and take a look? All right. Chuanzong didn't hesitate and nodded in agreement. Zhenkong glanced at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva and ignored the displeasure on Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's face. He held the magic wand and strode into the main hall. It was very strange. Zhenkong was able to easily enter the main hall that his Yuan Wu couldn't penetrate. The main hall was the main hall, and the Buddha statue was the Buddha statue. There was nothing strange about it. Even if Zhenkong released his Yuan Will and Clear Eyes technique, he still couldn't see anything strange. Master, please come in. Zhenkong had no choice but to wait inside and call out. Can I? Chuanzong's heart suddenly jumped. He felt as if something extremely important was about to appear in front of him. Moreover, he also felt that the appearance of this thing would affect his life. Everything would change because of this. He had no choice but to ask Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of the Namo pilgrimage again. Namo Maitreya Samantabhadra Bodhisattva put away his displeasure and raised his hand with a smile. Of course. Furthermore, I want to accompany you. Chuanzong was already a little absent-minded. He did not seem to hear Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's eye. As Chuanzong walked closer, the Buddhist light in the sky became brighter and more transparent. The Buddhist kingdom and the Buddhist light also became clearer. The faint chanting of the 10,000 Buddhas seemed to be right beside him. At this time, let alone Jinhan, even Dragon Horse Jinfeng couldn't help but calm down. He raised his head and looked at the sky uneasily. Lowering his voice, he asked, Second senior brother, what's going on? Could it be that this monk really has some background? Nonsense, Jinhan couldn't help but scold. If he doesn't have any background, how could he go to Lane Temple to obtain scriptures? Do you think that there are millions of Buddhas in Western Paradise and everyone can go there to obtain scriptures? Didn't you see many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in Lane Temple? This monk might be one of the Bodhisattvas. Damn it, Dragon Horse Jinfeng muttered. Then didn't I offend this monk? Offend the future Bodhisattva? So what if you offend him? Zhenhan laughed. As long as you don't get kicked out by him. As long as you reach Longevity Town. Oh, it seems that we don't have to wait that long. As long as Master achieves enlightenment today, our Master and disciple status will be confirmed. If he wants to say anything or do anything, it won't be that easy. What can he do to me? Dragon Horse Shenfeng was a little scared. Actually, thinking about it now, Master is very good to me. I always make him angry, but he never gets angry. Bullshit. Zhenhan glared at him and transmitted her voice. Do you think he's not angry? But what's the use of him being angry? He said that he wants to kick you out, but can he kick you out? I'm afraid that the only person he can kick out is eldest senior brother. However, he can't bear to kick out eldest senior brother. After all, in these 200 years, it was eldest senior brother who worked hard. If he kicks eldest senior brother out, he might not even be able to keep his life. Damn it, how do you know so much? Dragon Horse Shenfeng said enviously. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Why should I tell you? Zhenhan stole a glance at the sky above his head. The gathered Buddha light seemed to have condensed into a huge Buddha statue. Between the lines of the Buddha statue, there was a river of faith flashing. He was even more shocked and replied absent-mindedly. You're my second senior brother. Dragon Horse Shenfeng shouted anxiously. If you don't tell me, who will? Zhenhan became even more anxious and said. Damn it, you don't want to live anymore? Why are you so loud? Aren't you afraid of being heard by others? Don't you know how to transmit sound? And Dragon Horse Shenfeng didn't dare to say more, and only replied with a single word. Zhenhan was very satisfied with Zhenfeng's attitude and said with a smile, If you treat this monk as your master, then maybe I'll treat you as my junior brother. Why should this monk be my master? Dragon Horse Shenfeng was the first to speak, but he immediately came back to his senses and shouted back. Because of that, Zhenhan pointed at the Buddha statue in the sky and didn't say anything else. What is that? Dragon Horse Shenfeng looked at the dazzling scene in the sky. His fist-sized eyes reflected the Buddha light and the grayish-white color of the overlapping Buddha light. At this time, Chunzong had already walked to the front of the hall and was about to step over the threshold. Namo Methriya Buddha, Namo Methriya Buddha. The whole hall suddenly lit up and Buddhist chants resounded. Chuanzong was shocked. He looked into the hall and saw that it was empty. The golden body of Methriya Buddha was lying there casually. This golden body was unusually fat, with its chest exposed. It had a very warm smile on its face. In its left hand was a small bag, and in its right hand was a thick prayer bead. The Buddha's light was emitted from the golden body, but the sound of chanting came from the void. This Buddha light not only illuminated Zhen Kong, who was standing at the side of the hall, but also illuminated the incense table and the two thick red candles on it. Namo Methriya Buddha Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Methriya Buddha had already entered the hall and stood respectfully beside the incense table. As he chanted, he lit up the red candles. At the same time, incense appeared on the fist-sized incense burner in the middle of the red candles. As the red bricks were lit, the incense also burned. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Methriya Buddha? Chunzong was shocked and hurriedly stepped into the hall. Why is Bodhisattva here? Forgive this disciple's poor eyesight. Bodhisattva, please forgive this disciple. As he spoke, Chunzong hurriedly bowed. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Methriya Buddha didn't dare to let Chunzong bow. He hurriedly put his palms together, and Chunzong immediately couldn't bow. He rushed to say, Disciple Samantabhadra has come to the Western Paradise to welcome Namo Methriya Buddha's return. What? Namo Methriya Buddha? Chunzong was stunned and said in surprise, Bodhisattva isn't joking with disciple, right? Disciple? Disciple is the reincarnation of Namo Methriya Buddha? That's right. Buddha Lord is naturally the reincarnation of Namo Methriya Buddha in this life. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Methriya Buddha nodded and said, Disciple spent 2 rounds of the golden body and sacrificed 1,000,000 merit points to know that Buddha Lord had come to the Western Paradise in this life. Disciple then spent hundreds of years to find the Tantra of Xilinglong Temple in the Great Snow Mountain. At the same time, Buddha Lord used his physical body to make a great wish that mortals couldn't fulfill. He did a good deed of seeking scriptures in the Western Paradise. Buddha Lord, look at the great snow mountain now. The Buddha light is shining and the faith is like a river. It has become the center of attention of the entire Western paradise. Even Mahavairakana world-honored Buddha and Dipankara world-honored Buddha can't send their Buddha thoughts here. If Buddha Lord isn't Namo Maitreya Buddha, then who is? As Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha's words, the entire hall suddenly disappeared. The strange phenomenon in the sky fell into Chunzang's eyes. Chunzang couldn't help but put his palms together and said, Namo Amitba. Disciple always felt that this hall was so familiar. So that's how it is. As Chunzang said that, he looked at the golden body of Namo Maitreya Buddha in the hall again. A true sense of familiarity rose from the bottom of his heart. He couldn't help but smile. As he smiled, the entire hall immediately surged with Buddhist lotuses and heavenly flowers fell from the sky. Countless fairies appeared in the void and chanted the Buddha Lord's hymns. However, that was all. After the grand scene, there were no other strange phenomena. Even the Buddha light above his head was still slowly gathering and didn't really fall. Chunzang didn't understand. He turned to look at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha was also a little embarrassed. He put his palms together and said, Buddha Lord, please wait a moment. At this time, the mud wall of the hall had disappeared. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha could easily see the situation in the left and right side halls. He scanned with his Buddha consciousness and was shocked. At this moment, a soft cracking sound rang out. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha was stunned. He turned to look at the source of the sound and saw that the golden body of Namo Maitreya Buddha had strangely cracked open like a centipede. Boom! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha's mind went blank. The cracking sound was like thunder in his ears. He muttered in disbelief. The Buddha position has changed hands? No. Impossible. Chapter 4280. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva understood that although there were thousands of Buddhas in Lane Temple, there were not many with Buddhist positions. Just like how there were only 3,000 great Taoists, cultivators were like carps crossing the river. Only a few could obtain great Taoists. The Buddhism sect emphasized the 9 transformations golden body. The 9 transformations cultivation method did not necessarily require one to reincarnate. However, when one was forced to reincarnate, a powerful arhat would definitely have meticulous arrangements. No mistakes would be allowed. The Buddha Lords of Buddhism sect were led by Dipankara Buddha World-Honored Venerable, Mahavairakana World-Honored Venerable, and Maitreya Buddha World-Honored Venerable. The cultivation of these 3 Buddha Lords was the biggest mystery of Buddhism sect. Even the reincarnations of the sons of Buddhas with great supernatural powers had arrangements. How could their reincarnations not have careful arrangements? In the whole world, who could break their cultivation and snatch the Buddha position from under their supernatural powers? In the eyes of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, this was simply impossible. This had never happened since the establishment of the Buddhist sect. But now, the golden body of Namo Dang Lai Maitreya had cracked, and Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, who thought it was the reincarnation of Namo Dang Lai Maitreya, stood in front of the golden body without any change. Wasn't this the usual Buddha position change? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo subcontinent was extremely surprised. A Buddhist position change? Chuanzang was also shocked when he heard Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's words. He seemed to have thought of something and his face turned pale. A Buddhist position change? Zheng Kong, on the other hand, watched all of this with great interest as he laughed inwardly. Interesting, interesting. Boom! Just as Samantabhadra Bodhisattva and Chuanzang's expressions changed, a loud beast roar came from the sky. Zheng Kong was stunned. When he raised his head to look, he saw a flood of 5-colored starlight charging towards him from the Buddhist light that filled the sky. The Buddhist light that had completely covered the snowy mountain was instantly torn apart by the starlight. Once the crack appeared, the starlight immediately turned into a halo and rushed in all directions. Behind the starlight, the overlapping dark clouds were like huge mountains piled up together. They pushed over from the sky and covered the sky above the great snow mountain in the blink of an eye. From the dark clouds, a vast vital thought was like a cold stone. It brushed past the space and produced a clanging sound as it fell toward the exquisite temple. A great demon? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was shocked when he saw the vital thought. He shouted, "Strange things happen every year. Why are there so many of them this year? Can a mere great demon disperse the Buddhist light of my Namo Maitreya Buddha? How can a great demon disperse the Buddhist light that even Vairocana Buddha revered one not touch?" Roar before Samantabhadra Bodhisattva could do anything. The six-tusked white elephant that was originally hidden in the void roared and revealed itself. The white elephant was surrounded by Buddhist light, and layers of golden swastika runes appeared on the elephant's body. The white elephant first opened its mouth and shot out Buddhist light mixed with specks of golden light. It shot toward the dark clouds like a fountain. Then, the white elephant waved its long trunk and landed on the dark clouds where the vital thought swept out. Buzz buzz. When the white elephant's trunk landed in the air, it immediately turned into a white python-like Dharma image. Not only did it seal the space within dozens of miles, but the space also exploded under the heavy pressure. Tiny spatial cracks faintly appeared. Boom! The Buddhist light and golden light first collided with the dark clouds. The dark clouds were as solid as a mountain. Amidst a loud boom, the Buddhist light and golden light only created huge cracks in the dark clouds. They could not penetrate it at all. At this moment, the white elephant's trunk collided with the vital thought again. Clang! Unexpectedly, there was a metallic sound. Multicolored light and shadow suddenly appeared. Even though the ice-cold primordial intent was defeated, the white elephant's tusks were also sent flying. There were traces of blood on the tusks that were lacerated and lacerated. Roar! Damn it! At this moment, Zhen Kong had already flown out with a demonic staff in his hand. He roared and pounced forward. The flames around his body seemed to want to burn the sky. Second senior brother in the corner of the exquisite temple, Dragon Horse Zhenfeng, saw the scene in the sky and his legs trembled. Seeing Zhen Kong jump into the air, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Is senior brother crazy? The one who came is not an ordinary demon. He has not even shown himself, and has already defeated Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's white elephant. No matter how powerful senior brother is, he can't be a match for him. If he goes up. If he doesn't go up, he will be courting death for nothing." What do you know? Zhenhan smiled coldly. Shaoling Long Temple still has Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo. With him here, even if a great demon saint comes, what can he do? Eldest senior brother was the smartest one. Now that he had gone up, he was showing off to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. How could Bodhisattva hurt him? Granny, so that's how it is. I also want to go and snatch the merit. Longma Zhenfeng angrily said. This is an opportunity to perform in front of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. I can't let eldest senior brother snatch it away. Bullshit! Zhenhan cursed in a low voice again. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo knows how you and I usually behave. What's the point of showing off now? You and I had better hide here and wait patiently for Master to attain Buddhahood, so that we can bask in his glory. Zhen Kong naturally wasn't as despicable as Zhenhan thought. He just didn't want to put Chuanzong in danger. Although he knew that he wasn't a match for the one who came, he still urged his body and rushed forward. Unfortunately, before he could fall, he saw a black cloud falling from the sky and instantly landing in front of the six-tusked white elephant. The six-tusked white elephant was shocked and quickly retreated. At the same time, the six tusks suddenly left its body and turned into flying swords that pierced the black cloud. Clang, clang, clang! A series of sounds rang out as the white tusks rushed into the black cloud. However, they only managed to disperse the dark cloud a little. The five-colored light within the dark cloud reappeared and blocked the white tusks. The white tusks of the white tusks disappeared in the void. The dark cloud continued to rush towards the exquisite temple. A five-colored halo that seemed to be on the same side as the screen fell with a whoosh and smashed towards the six-tusked white elephant. Although the six-tusked white elephant had already retreated, the five-colored halo had already descended while its body was still in the air. How dare you! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Daxing frowned. An 8th-rank Buddhist lotus appeared under his feet to support him. He waved the jade scepter in his hand, and a huge lotus appeared out of thin air, blocking the six-tusked white elephant. When the five-colored halo saw that Lianhe had blocked it, It suddenly sped up and landed on the six-tusked white elephant's shadow. Awu, the six-tusked white elephant let out a blood-curdling screech. All of its shadows were split into 6 pieces, and its body was already drenched in blood. Clang! At this time, the huge lotus rushed into the 5-colored halo. In the sound of metal clanging, the 5-colored halo was shattered. At the same time, the lotus turned into specks of Buddhist light and fell into the air. Evildoer, eat this grandpa's staff. Before the specks of Buddhist light fell, a fiery figure rushed out from the shattered Buddhist light. A voice that could almost roar through the heavens and earth sounded. Zhen Kong held the devil wand in his hand and rushed towards the dark cloud. Jia, a hoarse voice came from the dark cloud. Are you the fire ape that protects the human race? Zhen Kong naturally didn't say anything. His devil wand fell into the dark cloud like a thunderbolt. With a boom, the 5-colored halo was swung out from the dark cloud like a screen. However, this time, it didn't land on Zhen Kong. Instead, it landed on the devil wand. Boom! With a loud sound, Zhen Kong's arms went numb and the web between his thumb and forefinger became hot. He couldn't hold on to the devil wand anymore. Woo! It flew into the air. Before Zhen Kong could move his body to grab the devil wand, the 5-colored halo rose into the sky. Whoosh! The halo flashed and the devil wand was actually shattered into 6 pieces. Damn it, damn it, damn it. When Zhen Kong saw that the magic wand was destroyed, his eyes immediately turned blood red. He cursed angrily and flames flickered around his body. His ape body involuntarily swelled up. In just a short moment, a 300-meter tall fire ape appeared in the air. Damn it, this fire ape is indeed powerful. Longma Zhenfeng was somewhat flabbergasted. Previously, he only had the strength of a 4th-grade elemental energy. Now I'm afraid that he has reached the 5th grade? So what if he's at the 5th grade? Zhen Han understood and rejoiced in Zhen Kong's misfortune. The 6-tusked white elephant has the strength of a 6th-grade elemental energy. Even the 6-tusked white elephant was defeated. How could this monkey be a match for it? If Samantabhadra Bodhisattva wasn't here, today would be the day of his death. Indeed, just as Zhen Han said, the moment the fire ape's avatar appeared, a voice came from the black cloud. Is this the famous fire ape's avatar? Did my great-grandson die under this Dharmakaya? What a joke! How could such a small trick hurt my good grandson? As the voice spoke, a 5-colored light rushed out from the black cloud. However, this time, the light turned into a wave and fell from the sky. Swish! Under the light, Zhen Kong didn't dodge at all. Not only were the flames around his body extinguished, his body was also riddled with holes and rapidly returned to its original form. Damn it, Zhen Kong seemed to rather die than submit. He forcefully struggled and opened his mouth, wanting to spit out the demon core. Enough! A sneer came from the black cloud. You dare to make a fool of yourself in front of me with your insignificant methods? If not for the fact that you're just a puppet, I would have killed you long ago. As the voice spoke, countless black strands appeared in the air around Zhen Kong. They were like millions of little snakes that imprisoned Zhen Kong's body. Namo Maitreya Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya chanted, and appeared beside Zhen Kong. With a wave of his jade scepter, Buddhist light fell into the air like swords and dispelled the countless black threads. Then the Buddhist light swept Zhen Kong away. However, at this moment, another wild laughter came from the black cloud. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, you've been tricked. Chapter 4281. Following his words, the space within a few hundred miles began to vibrate. The 5-colored starlight that had previously filled the sky fell from the sky. At the same time, the 5-colored starlight that had appeared at the feet of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Majesty also began to roll up wildly, trapping him in the domain of the 5-colored starlight. Sensing the power of the 5-colored starlight, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva seemed to have thought of something. He frowned and slapped the top of his head. Boom! The Buddhist light gushed out and turned into tens of thousands of lotuses to protect him and Zhen Kong. At the same time, the 8th-grade Buddhist lotus under his feet also overflowed with Buddhist light. It suddenly expanded and protected him. Countless golden runes surged around his body. Amidst the chanting of thousands of Buddhas, the golden body of the Buddha appeared. What's the use of this golden body of the Buddha? Break. Inside the dark clouds, There was still no sign of the demon's true form. However, with a low roar, the five-colored starlight that filled the sky broke through the air. The lotuses were smashed into pieces by the five-colored starlight. The space that was enveloped by the Buddha's light began to collapse. Namo Maitreya Buddha Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's expression changed slightly. The mirror behind his head overflowed with Buddhist light. Countless streams of faith flowed out of the mirror and turned into thumb-sized lotuses that flew into the sky again. Once the Buddhist light and lotuses appeared, the entire space stabilized again. At the same time, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva raised his hand and waved it. The jade rui flashed across the mirror, and hundreds of Buddhist kingdoms fell into it. Dozens of heavenly dragons flew out of the void and surrounded the jade rui as they fell towards the dark clouds. However, the space where the jade rui landed was shattered. The dark clouds didn't even have a chance to escape. The Buddhist light suddenly appeared and shattered all the dark clouds. The dark clouds disappeared, revealing the true form of the demon within the dark clouds. A five-colored shell appeared in front of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. There were countless strange patterns engraved on the shell, and the five-colored light was produced from these patterns. Boom! The space within 100 miles of the shell was completely confined. The jade scepter carried the power of the dragon and elephant, mixed with the power of the Buddhist kingdom, and fell on the five-colored light. Amidst the glaring Buddhist light, the five-colored light of the shell also emitted an extremely bright brilliance, entangling with the Buddhist light. The whole world was trembling. The entire snow mountain was shaking. Whether it was the Buddhist light or the dark clouds, they were all shattered in the trembling. The five-colored shell was shot into the void and shadows appeared in the air. However, when Samantabhadra Bodhisattva lifted the jade rui, a laugh sounded in the void again. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, you've been tricked again. The Bodhisattva of the Thunder Temple is so. Damn it! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was rarely angry. He cursed in a low voice and opened his mouth. Countless heavenly flowers fell madly towards the main hall of the exquisite temple, as if he wanted to protect Chuanzong in the exquisite temple. Unfortunately, before the heavenly flowers fell, the sky above the exquisite temple lit up like a mountain. The five-colored light soared into the sky again. The shell that was shot into the void had unknowingly moved to the top of the exquisite temple. The opened shell covered the entire main hall. The heavenly flowers fell on the five-colored light and turned into Buddhist light. Master Zhenfeng and Zhenhan shouted and rushed out at the right time to the main hall. Unfortunately, before they could get close, they were pushed back by the five-colored light. Evildoer Samantabhadra Bodhisattva roared and raised the jade rui again. He scolded angrily, Chuanzong is the sutra seeker of nirvana that my Thunder Temple and the Immortal Palace found together. His safety concerns the safety of the three continents. If you hurt him, don't blame the Buddhist sect and the Confucian sect for joining forces to attack the Thousand Demons sacred realm. Oh my! The voice in the shell was very strange. You scared me to death. So this is the sutra seeker that the Confucian sect and the Buddhist sect found together. It concerns the safety of the two sects of the human race? However, I heard that the Mahayana Buddhist Sutra has already been obtained. Let this little pawn of the Dragon Palace carry it to the hidden immortal continent? Why do you still need this sutra seeker? Quickly release Chuanzong. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was somewhat helpless and shouted, Chuanzong must personally bring the Mahayana Buddhist Sutra back to the Longevity Town. Otherwise, this sutra seeker of nirvana will not be considered finished. Yes, don't worry, Samantabhadra. I will definitely let this little monk go. Moreover, I will definitely not harm a single hair on his head. The voice was very calm. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva heard this, and could not help but feel relieved. He nodded and said, Since you are so tactful, as long as you release Chuanzong, I will not pursue this matter. However, before he could finish, the voice interrupted him. I just want to live forever and eat a piece of Chuanzong's flesh. Impudent. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva felt like he was being played. He sneered and said, That is just a lie that the primordial chaos ancestor instigated the demon race to destroy the sutra seeker of nirvana. How can you believe that? If it was in the past, I would naturally not believe it. However, today, I saw the phenomenon of nirvana on the Great Snow Mountain. How can I not believe it? The voice was very proud. The scattered light on the shell shrank and shrank, as if it was laughing maniacally. Before the physical body of reincarnation reaches nirvana, isn't it the primer for the elixir of immortality? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's expression changed. His originally compassionate face turned cold. He said word by word, "This must be what the primordial chaos ancestor told you? The Tao sect is good at stealing the yin and yang of heaven and earth, and doing things that harm the harmony of heaven and earth. Using my physical body to refine pills may have some magical effects. However, you must know that the reincarnation of a Buddha carries karma. How can the Tao sect's pills remove this karma? Your strength is now on the verge of the upper 8th grade of origin energy. The demon race's great sage position is in sight. It is unwise to ruin your future for the sake of immortality." If there is no limit to life, the great sage and the Buddha Lord are nothing. The great demon seemed to be moved by Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. "I see." When Samantabhadra Bodhisattva heard this, he immediately understood. He smiled and said, "I already know. If you let Chuanzong go, I can guarantee that I will personally go to Mahavairakana and ask for one for you. What do you think?" The demon in the shell sounded hesitant. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva took advantage of the situation and said, "Don't worry. I already know about your background, and I also know about the existence of that person. You definitely did not get that person's permission to come out this time. Otherwise, that person would definitely not let you come. Don't you think so?" How do you know?" The demon was shocked and asked hurriedly, "What's so difficult about that?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled and said, "How many demons in the world can have the 5-colored halo? My lane temple is in charge of everything in the world. How can I not know about that person's existence?" All right. The demon in the shell saw that its background was exposed and did not want to cause any more trouble. It took a step back and said, "I can release this monk, but you must give me that fire ape." "Why do you want Jin Kong?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was surprised. "He is only protecting Chuanzong's disciple. He killed my great-grandson." The demon gritted its teeth and said, "If I don't capture him and skin him alive, how can I put down my face?" Sai Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was in a difficult position. Looking at the demonic creature's appearance, it must have been tricked by the Grand Mist ancestor, and the great-grandson he mentioned must have been in the same situation. However, his great-grandson had become a sacrifice in the sutra-seeking extreme bliss tribulation, completing Chuanzong's tribulation. Since he was strong enough, he had blackmailed the Buddhist sect. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he closed it again. He might not know who this demon's great-grandson was, but the Buddhist sect's Arhat in charge of the tribulation would definitely know. If the culprit was Jin Kong, it would be better to say that it was the Grand Mist ancestor or some other Arhat. How could Samantabhadra Bodhisattva say that? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva could only ponder for a moment. He glanced at the wounded Jin Kong hiding in his Buddhist light and said, "Jin Kong is right here. You can come and take him at any time. However, you should let Chuanzong out first and ask him. After all, he is Jin Kong's master." Jin Kong was powerlessly lying in the air. The demon's 5-colored halo was extremely strange. Not only did it destroy his physical body, but it also prevented his physical body from recovering. Moreover, it was corroding his heart and lungs at an extremely fast speed. Jin Kong circulated his cultivation technique to resist. He saw everything that happened in front of him. Perhaps he already knew his ending, but there was no cowering or fear in his eyes. Samantabhadra, are you trying to shirk responsibility?" The demon found it funny when he heard Huang Xiaolong's words. "The little monk is in my hands. His life and death is up to my will. Can he object? Why don't you just send Jin Kong over? Why go through all this trouble?" Namamethriya Samantabhadra Bodhisattva waved his hand, and Jin Kong was sent to him. He said, "Ask Chuanzong. As long as he nods, I will immediately hand Jin Kong over to you." "You really took off your pants to fart. What an unnecessary move." The demon was a little impatient. The light from the shell spread out and revealed Chuanzong's figure. He said coldly, "Little monk, you already know the origin of this matter. Do you want to be eaten by me?" Or do you want Jin Kong to come with me? Namu Umat Ba Chuanzong didn't hesitate at all. He chanted the name of Buddha. How can I let my disciple die for me? I am willing to go with you. Ah? The demon was completely stunned. You want to be eaten by me? Is there something wrong with your brain? Chuanzong Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was also very anxious. He shouted, Don't forget your responsibility. Don't forget the great wish you made in the longevity town. Sacrificing Jin Kong can save countless lives. Chapter 4282. Chuanzong took a deep breath and looked at Jin Kong. Yes, I remember my great wish. I'm willing to let my Buddha light shine on the hidden immortal. I also hope that the kind men and women of the 3 continents will listen to the teachings of my Mahayana Sutra. But Jin Kong is also a living being, not to mention the fact that he has protected me for 200 years. Even if he's a complete stranger, I have no right to decide his life and death. In this world, the only one who can decide my life and death is myself. I'm willing to exchange my life for Jin Kong's. Idiot. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva couldn't help but scold. Chuanzong, not to mention that just the fact that you're responsible for the Sutra of Nirvana means that you can't talk about life and death. Your life and death no longer belongs to you but to the Thunder Temple and the Immortal Palace. Your death could lead to the deaths of millions and millions of lives. After hearing Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's words, Chuanzong felt an inexplicable sense of disgust. He was extremely disgusted by this act of sacrificing oneself for the greater good. Moreover, he seemed to have heard some other meaning from the words. However, he didn't show it. Instead, he put his palms together and said, Namo Amitabha. I've already obtained the Mahayana Sutra from the Thunder Temple. After I go, I only need Jin Kong, Jin Han, and Jin Feng to deliver the sutra to the immortal town. Compared to the sutra, my life and death is no longer important. No, you must deliver the sutra to the immortal town's Rivertide Temple. Why must I deliver it personally? Chuanzong asked in surprise. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva clenched his teeth and said patiently, There's no need to talk about this now. If you don't make a decision, then I'll help you. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was just about to speak when a 5-colored halo appeared around his body. His hand lightened as Jin Kong disappeared into thin air. The monster's voice sounded triumphant again. Since it's so difficult, why don't you just let me take them all? How dare you? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was shocked and waved the jade rui again. Rumble. At this moment, there was another thunderous sound in the sky above the great snow mountain. The black and white color that was previously hidden behind the light of Buddha, and later covered by the demonic creature's 5-colored halos and dark demonic clouds, suddenly shone brightly. Moreover, thick lightning threads that were even more vigorous than horned dragons surged out from these black and white patterns. Lightning energy that exceeded everyone's understanding seeped out from these lightning threads and frantically covered the 10,000-mile radius of the Great Snow Mountain. What was special was that when these thunder threads appeared, the power of thunder within hundreds of thousands of miles was stimulated. Layers of the power of heaven and earth turned into thunder and lightning, gathering towards the Great Snow Mountain. It was as if thousands of thunders were converging. The entire sky, with the Great Snow Mountain as the center, formed layers of huge thunder vortexes, rolling one after another, as if they were rippling all over the sky. Not only that, but as soon as these thunder lights formed, a cryptic, heavy, cold, vast, and unparalleled will of heaven and earth flowed out from the cracks of the thunder lights, instantly covering hundreds of thousands of miles. The phenomenon of the Great Snow Mountain had long attracted the attention of the supreme beings of the 3 continents. Every being released their consciousness to investigate and pay attention to the development of the situation. Previously, the signs of Nanwu Maitreya Buddha, attaining enlightenment, had completely blocked these consciousnesses, and the strange appearance of the demonic creatures had allowed these consciousnesses to enter the Great Snow Mountain. At this moment, the appearance of thousands of thunders instantly crushed these consciousnesses, and all the supreme beings hurriedly tried to withdraw their consciousnesses. Unfortunately, the will of heaven and earth didn't give them any chance at all. The will of heaven and earth covered hundreds of thousands of miles and completely strangled these consciousnesses, leaving no trace at all. not to mention the Thunder Temple, Immortal Palace, Great Sage Temple, and the other supreme beings, who were all shocked, even Nanwu Methreya Samantabhadra, and the unknown great demon at the center of the thunder lights were incomparably shocked. This was because when the power of thunder appeared, the entire Great Snow Mountain was imprisoned by the thunder lights. Everyone felt as if they were submerged in incomparably heavy water, and they couldn't even breathe. Zhen Kong's figure had already been revealed. He had been captured by a 5-colored halo on the great shell demon's body, and the 5-colored halo had turned into a hand and was tightly gripping Zhen Kong's neck. The pitiful Zhen Kong was holding onto the halo with both hands, and he seemed to be desperately struggling. As for Chunzong, he had also appeared from the 5-colored halo. At this moment, his hands were twisted behind his back, and his entire body was entangled by several rays of light, making him look very miserable. However, no one cared about the miserable state of the two of them at this moment, and they all raised their eyes to look at the center of the thunder lights in the sky. At the center of the thunder lights, the great demon's 5-colored halo had already collapsed, and the mountain-like black clouds had been swept away. However, the Buddhist light that had previously filled the Great Snow Mountain didn't dissipate at all. Moreover, the Buddha light that had almost collapsed from the impact of the 5-colored halo actually became more solid. Nanwu Methreya Samantabhadra didn't know what had happened, but when he saw the Buddha statue become more solid, his heart calmed down. Buzz Nanwu Methreya Samantabhadra's heart had just calmed down when he saw that in the space sealed by the thunder lights, endless movements appeared around the Buddha statue. The heaven and earth within 1,000 miles shook, and the wind and clouds changed colors. Endless power of faith was born from the void, and poured down on the Buddha statue like a waterfall. The vast power of faith fell into the mirror behind the Buddha statue, and the light on the mirror became more and more resplendent, as if a scorching sun was gradually being born. Under the scorching sun, the Buddha statue became more and more plump, and it gradually became taller and bigger, and gradually filled the entire center of the thunder lights. Nanwu Methreya Buddha has attained fruition? Nanwu Methreya Samantabhadra was stunned again. He really didn't understand. He had thought that Chuanzong was Nanwu Methreya's present reincarnation body, and that he would attain fruition today. However, when Chuanzong entered the main hall, other than the phenomenon of fruition on the surface, there was no substantial movement at all. Now when Nanwu Methreya Samantabhadra gave up on this idea, the phenomenon of Nanwu Methreya Buddha's fruition appeared again. However, when he saw that the phenomenon of fruition stopped in the sky and didn't fall, and Chuanzong was still in the hands of the great demon with an unpredictable background, Nanwu Methreya Samantabhadra understood that Chuanzong was definitely not the Buddha who had attained fruition. Nanwu Methreya Buddha's throne has changed hands. This is a major event that has never happened since the creation of the world. I don't know which powerful Buddha Lord took the throne from Nanwu Methreya. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Nanwu Methreya had already understood the outcome. He pondered with mixed feelings. This is the greatest secret of the Buddhism sect. I'm lucky enough to see it. Whether it's a blessing or a misfortune, it's all up to me. Boom! Just as Nanwu Methreya Samantabhadra's thoughts raced, the sun-like light suddenly produced a 1,000-mile-thick pillar of Buddha's light. This pillar of light soared into the sky, carrying the power of faith from 100,000 miles up in the sky, and rushed straight into the center of the thunder lights. Like a giant invisible pillar inserted into a pool of water, the center of the thunder lights stirred up a 1,000-mile-wide pitch-black vortex that pierced straight into the void. At the same time, the ghostly green light that had appeared first, but had now been forgotten by everyone, stuck close to the edge of the vortex and went deep into it. Woo woo woo! A mysterious sound that sounded like the cries of gods and ghosts was heard in the void. Wherever the ghostly green light flashed, the black and white in the thunder lights immediately intertwined and turned into a grayish-white color. This grayish-white color was as still as marble at first, but then it condensed into the green light and began to swirl wildly. A huge transmission channel finally took shape in Nanwu Methreya Samantabhadra's shock. Buzz! The space thousands of miles above the sky rumbled because of the appearance of this space channel. The entire space was distorted by the pressure. All the light and shadows, whether they were Buddha's light, thunder lights, or clouds, were elongated. The sound of thunder was also faintly discernible in everyone's ears. Swoosh, 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 the will of heaven and earth, which had previously imprisoned hundreds of thousands of miles of the Great Snow Mountain, began to permeate the space, creating ripples in the distorted light and shadows. Someone from the Buddhist kingdom? Namwamethriyasamantabhadra was so shocked that he was numb. He did not know how to think. A thought was barely squeezed out of his mind, but it was instantly shattered by the scene in front of him. Whoa, a strange whistling sound of wind was heard. It was extremely long. Then countless crazy waves of energy were emitted from the teleportation channel. These waves of energy carried with them the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. However, as soon as these ripples appeared, they were immediately destroyed by the will of heaven and earth that permeated through the space channel. Rumble, tens of thousands of thunderbolts in the space gathered toward the space channel. In the blink of an eye, all the thunderbolts had gathered into a huge ball. As soon as this ball of thunderbolts was formed, the transmission channel that pierced straight into the void began to shrink and collapse. The green, gray, and Buddha's light instantly reversed. Boom, a huge rumble sounded again, and the entire sky was silent. All the colors faded, and a golden Buddha statue that was tens of thousands of feet tall appeared in the ball of thunderbolts like a dazzling stream of light. Namwamethriya Buddha, although he could not see what the golden Buddha statue looked like in the thunderbolts, Namwamethriyasamantabhadra still chanted Buddha's name with a smile on his face. It seemed that he had made a decision at this moment. Boom, the silence only lasted for a few breaths. Then tens of thousands of thunderbolts surged. All the thunderbolts converged, and like a myriad of streams returning to their origin, they fell into a tall and thin figure behind the golden Buddha statue. Amidst the thunderbolts, a slightly excited and surprised voice rang out. Damn it, that was so close. I didn't expect that this transmission channel would not be enough to reach the Great Snow Mountain. If not for the Great Master's power of faith on the Great Snow Mountain, and the fact that this power of faith can ignore space and time, even if I left a divine will mark here, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have been able to be transmitted here so easily. Chapter 4283. Namwamethriya Buddha, don't be happy too early. We haven't explored yet, so we don't know if this is the Great Snow Mountain. If this is the Great Snow Mountain we are in at this time, the lightning disappeared, and a divine sense that made Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's heart tremble swept over from the place where the lightning disappeared. When that divine sense instantly covered the entire Great Snow Mountain, the excitement and ecstasy in that voice disappeared without a trace. Yes, this is the Great Snow Mountain, and below us is the exquisite temple. Even, this Great Snow Mountain is the Great Snow Mountain we are in, because the sutra-seeking extreme bliss has only just begun. Namwamethriya Buddha, another voice sounded in the air. This way, our inner demons can be cut off. Yes, since we have already returned, this welcoming ceremony is unnecessary. While speaking, Xiaohua's thin and tall figure slowly walked down from where the lightning was. It was as if there was a flight of stairs that led to the heavens. As Xiaohua walked down, layers of pressure fell on the little exquisite temple like a huge mountain. When Xiaohua's voice fell, Xiaohua raised his hand and waved. A huge palm appeared, and all the fluctuations and strange lights fell into his palm. However, it was only a moment before the omnipresent will of the world fell again. With a swish-swish sound, the huge hand immediately shrank by more than 40%. However, even so, in the sky, other than the Buddhist light, the five-colored halo, the dark clouds, the lightning, and the clouds were all taken into Xiaohua's hand. Even the sky that was like a wrinkle was smoothed out by him at this moment, causing everyone to tremble in fear. As soon as the anomaly disappeared, a strange phenomenon occurred around the golden Buddha statue once again. Rumble, the Buddha's light that was previously covered by the lightning shone brightly again. The river of faith that was originally like a gurgling stream was now like a monstrous torrent that gushed out from various cracks in the void, and fell into the light of the Buddha's light that had already solidified. Namwamethriya Buddha, Namwamethriya Buddha. Wherever the river of faith went, millions of Buddhist kingdoms were born. Endless heavenly flowers covered 100,000 miles of space, and a strange fragrance filled the air. Thousands of heavenly dragons and fairies began to appear. The sound of wooden fish and the chanting of 10,000 Buddhas sounded like the sounds of nature. An indescribable benevolence was emitted from the forehead of the Buddha statue. Moreover, the Buddha statue slowly fell, and its target was the golden Buddha statue that Xiaohua had just left. Namo Maitreya Buddha. At this point, Samantabhadra no longer had any doubts. As long as the Buddhist light condensed from the power of faith fell into the golden Buddha statue, the Buddha Lord from the Buddhist kingdom would definitely attain Namo Maitreya Buddha's fruit. However, what surprised Samantabhadra was that although the Buddhist light of the golden Buddha statue hadn't dissipated, and he still couldn't see the Buddha Lord's appearance clearly, after the golden Buddha statue slowly returned to normal, it raised its hand slightly, and an 8th-rank Buddhist lotus appeared, wanting to block the descending golden Buddha statue. How is this possible? Doesn't the Buddha Lord want to attain fruit? Samantabhadra was dumbfounded. However, the Buddhist lotus didn't seem to be enough to block the Buddha statue that had attained fruit. The Buddha statue landed on the lotus platform under its feet. Alas, why do you have to make things difficult for this poor monk? The golden body of the Buddha sighed. The compassion in his words made the selfish thoughts in Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's heart disappear instantly. Then the golden body of the Buddha waved his hand, and a 7-colored light flashed. A Buddhist instrument fell on top of his head, blocking the Buddha statue that had attained fruition. How is this possible? Which Buddhist weapon can? Ah, the wonderful tree of 7 treasures? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was completely dumbfounded. Why is this Buddhist treasure here? Namo Maitreya Buddha, I understand now. With this item alone, Buddha Lord can obtain the position of Namo Maitreya Buddha. Since the Buddha statue was stopped, the golden Buddha statue returned to its original state. When the golden Buddha statue turned around, Samantabhadra of Namo Pilgrim had a complete mental breakdown. He was almost ecstatic in his heart, because there was another Chuanzong in front of him. This Samantabhadra felt his golden body lose its color, and he felt like scratching his ears and cheeks. Second senior brother, quickly come and see. Draconic horse Zhenfeng raised its head, its hooves trembling slightly as it said, "There's another monk in the sky." Nonsense. Zhenhan swallowed a mouthful of saliva and whispered, "That's Master." Master? Draconic horse Zhenfeng was stunned. Looking at Chuanzong, who was still being captured by the 5-colored demon race, he asked curiously, "Isn't our master that? How can that weak monk be our master?" Zhenhan coldly transmitted, "Only this Buddha Lord who can attain Buddhahood can be our master." Draconic horse Zhenfeng understood the meaning of Zhenhan's words and couldn't help but shout, "Second senior brother, you're really good at taking advantage of the situation." Zhenhan smiled and said, "There are hundreds of millions of people like me in the 3 continents. One more won't make much of a difference." Namo Maitreya Buddha, the Buddha statue with the face of Chuanzong, but in reality, it was Buddha Subhudi's golden body. Just as it was about to speak, Xiaohua opened his mouth. His voice was extremely cold and frigid. Even though his voice was extremely faint, it resounded like thunder within the space of 1,000 li. "Master, let's put your matter aside for now. It won't be too late to talk about it after I deal with this matter. I'll listen to Tanyua's instructions." Bodhi smiled and didn't say anything. He also slowly walked down from the sky. As Bodhi walked down from the sky, the imprisonment of the entire Great Snow Mountain disappeared like snow melting ice. Seeing that the imprisonment was gone, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly stepped on the lotus platform and flew up to the sky to greet Bodhi. He put his palms together and saluted. Disciple Samantabhadra Bodhisattva greets Maitreya Buddha of the world. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Bodhi waved his right hand, and the Buddha light turned into a cluster of heavenly flowers that supported Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. He said, "This poor monk isn't Buddha Lord Maitreya Buddha. Bodhisattva, you've bowed to the wrong person." "What? Buddha Lord? Buddha Lord isn't Buddha Lord?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was even more surprised. He looked at the Buddha fruit above his head that was blocked by the wonderful tree of 7 treasures and almost blurted out, "You've taken the Buddha position and you still say you're not Buddha Lord?" Xiaohua walked to the sky above the Shaolin Long Temple. His eyes swept across the temple that had not changed much. The scene of him meeting the old monk here that day quickly flashed past his eyes. And then his eyes fell on Chuanzong, who was captured by the monster. He already understood that today was the day when Jiang Luer passed by the Great Snow Mountain and obtained the gold leaf of the exquisite Palm Leaf Sutra from the Shaolinglong Temple. But long before this moment, he had already taken away the gold leaf. Today, Jiang Luer was destined not to get the gold leaf, destined not to achieve fruition. Fortunately, he had rushed back in time. The sutra-seeking nirvana had just begun, and Jiang Luer was only passing by the Great Snow Mountain. As long as his Buddha avatar returned the exquisite Leaf Sutra and the ancient Kali he had obtained from the primitive continent to Jiang Luer would be able to achieve perfect fruition as a Chuanzong. When Xiaohua's eyes moved from the colorful brilliance in Yuan Tongtian's body to the light strands on Chuanzong's body and then to the shell monster, he laughed angrily and said, "Who are you? How dare you disturb the sutra-seeking in paradise? Haha, it doesn't matter who I am. What matters is, who's behind me?" Seeing Xiaohua's divine sense, the monster naturally knew that he was no match for him. He simply said straightforwardly, "My ancestor is the master of the colorful sea in the thousand demons' sacred realm. If you know what's good for you, don't ask anymore. Before you came, I had already discussed with Samantabhadra. Since the little monk is the Buddha of the sutra seeking in paradise, I won't make things difficult for him. This fire ape is the culprit who killed my great-grandson. I can't let him go. Otherwise, my ancestor's face will be ruined. If my ancestor gets angry and attacks the Thunder Temple, I'm afraid none of us will have an easy time." Ha ha ha! Xiaohua laughed so hard that he was rocking back and forth. He pointed at the five-colored demon race and said, "If it was before the sutra seeking extreme bliss, this poor Taoist would have hesitated. But now, these words are just a joke in this poor Taoist's ears. If your ancestor's face is ruined and the Thunder Temple's face is ruined, then does this Xiao's face look good? This Xiao?" The monster was stunned. As if he thought of something, he suddenly said in a low voice, You're Xiaohua?" Then the five-colored halo around the monster's body shone brightly. He quickly pounced on Chuanzong, as if he wanted to cut off all means of retreat. When Xiaohua saw that this demonic being actually knew his name, he thought that it was an old acquaintance. However, when he saw the demonic being's actions, he knew that it was definitely an enemy. He coldly snorted, and with a shake of his divine sense, the demonic being's surroundings were imprisoned. The five-colored halo of light was like a giant hand that was suspended in midair. Wu Xiaohua raised his hand and grabbed. Chuanzong rose into the air. The five-colored golden light that even Samantabhadra Bodhisattva couldn't do anything to turned into a ball of light and fell into his hand. When Chuanzong landed beside him, he looked at the wind and frost between Jiang Luer's eyebrows. His heart was slightly sour. He said warmly, "Stay by my side." Yes, Xiaohua's gaze was so gentle that it directly shone into Chuanzong's heart. A kind of indescribable warmth fell into Chuanzong's heart. This feeling was 10,000 times stronger than when he met Vairocana Buddha at Lane Temple. The concern in Xiaohua's tone was the kind of natural concern of a senior. It was a kind of pure affection in the world, making Chuanzong unable to have any doubts. When Chuanzong agreed, he saw a slight smile on Xiaohua's lips. Chuanzong's heart was greatly shaken. His eyes suddenly became moist. A long, long time ago, in the childhood memories that he had to frantically search for at night, Xiaohua's familiar appearance faintly emerged. This familiarity made him feel incomparably safe. Chapter 4284. Xiaohua originally wanted to turn his head, but when he saw Chuanzong's expression change, his heart moved, and he said with a smile, "Chuanzong, don't be afraid, just stand here. With this Xiao here, no matter who it is, they can't hurt even a hair on your head." Xiaohua's words were really arrogant, but in Chuanzong's ears, they were so firm. He didn't put his palms together to speak, but slightly nodded and replied, "Yes." At this time, his expression had already returned to normal. Useless thing. Xiaohua's gaze fell on the seriously injured Yuan Tongtian in midair, and he scolded. Yuan Tongtian saw Xiaohua's powerful appearance, and his heart was already shocked. He and Xiaohua's fate was not shallow. Early on in the Flame Forest Swamp, when he was released from the seal, he saw Xiaohua. At that time, Xiaohua was just an aura-refining cultivator, and in his eyes he was just an ant. Later on, when he saw Xiaohua again, the fire ape began to suffer in Xiaohua's hands. After that, Yuan Tongtian refused to submit to Xiaohua several times, and that unruly temperament aroused Xiaohua's good impression. Now that he saw Xiaohua again on the snowy mountain in the Pure Land world, Yuan Tongtian almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. At this time, Xiaohua's magical power was far from what he could compare to. His unruly temperament simply didn't have the qualifications to be arrogant in front of Xiaohua. However, when Yuan Tongtian heard Xiaohua's words, he was stunned at first, but then a shock that was even more indescribable than when he saw Xiaohua rose from the bottom of his heart. In just an instant, he seemed to have understood something. He was originally imprisoned by Xiaohua. How did he inexplicably come to the Pure Land world? Perhaps only Xiaohua knew. Moreover, although Xiaohua's words were scolding, but it was obviously a kind of rebuke from an elder to a junior. Yuan Tongtian connected Patriarch Subhoodie and Xiaohua together, and he couldn't help but struggle. Xiaohua also didn't expect that in Yuan Tongtian's ears, his words were simply 100 times more effective than elixirs. Yuan Tongtian's dispirited face immediately showed ecstasy, and the heart that had been wandering for hundreds of years suddenly returned to him. His eyes blossomed with a rare golden light, and that golden light was blocked by overflowing tears. Yuan Tongtian suddenly flew into the air. His flesh that had been torn apart by the five-colored halo was now bleeding profusely. Seeing Yuan Tongtian like this, Xiaohua's heart ached for no reason. He waved his hand, and the five-colored brilliance around Yuan Tongtian's body also fell into his hand, and at the same time, a medicinal pill, and said to come to the Pure Land world to seek scriptures. To seek scriptures, isn't to be courting death? How would Yuan Tongtian dare to speak? When the medicinal pill fell into his stomach, the magical effect rushed out from inside out, and the wounds all over Yuan Tongtian's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. See, others might not know, but Namo Great House Samantabhadra was extremely clear about the dangers of the five-colored halo. This halo that even gave Mahavirakana a headache was like child's play in Xiaohua's hands. How could he not be shocked? Immediately after, Xiaohua did another thing that shocked everyone. Xiaohua didn't make a move against the five-colored demon, but instead raised his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror from his bosom. Under the urging of his magic power, a beam of light shot out, and 1,000 Zhonglong pig demon flew out from that beam of light. What a big pig! Dragon Horse Shinfeng couldn't help but cry out in surprise in the small temple. How many meals will it take to finish this? When this pig demon appeared, the will of the world that had already disappeared near the snowy mountain reappeared. With a crackling sound, inexplicable thunderbolts and fluctuations fell into the pig demon's body, and the pig demon's body rapidly shrank, and in a few breaths, it was only 100 zhong long. Stop eating. Xiaohua looked at the sleepy Tunshin, who still didn't know what was going on, and angrily scolded. Why aren't you looking at who this is? Who is it? When Tunshin heard Xiaohua tell him to stop eating, he was startled at first, but when he saw Jianglu, beside Xiaohua, the sleepiness on his face instantly disappeared, and a kind of excitement and ecstasy emerged from his heart. He recklessly threw himself in front of Chuanzong, kowtowed and shouted, Buddha Lord, so you are here. Ba Chuanzong naturally didn't understand what was going on, and was somewhat at a loss as to what to do as he looked at this unusually simple and honest pig demon. Not knowing what to do, Xiaohua looked at Yuan Tongtian, and then at Dragon Horse Shinfeng and Zhenhan in the small temple, and his eyes turned and he said with a smile, Your Buddha Lord is currently praying for sutras in paradise, and needs a disciple to protect him. Whether you can obtain this honor or not will depend on your performance. Yes, this disciple understands. Tunshin was really ecstatic, and the pig had looked around. When it saw the five-colored shell, it immediately understood something and roared loudly. What? Are you the one who wants to rob my master? What do you mean by your master? If you can't kill this thing, what face do you have to call yourself his disciple? Xiaohua said with a sneer. Do you still need me to take action for this little thing? Tunshin didn't care at all, and raised his hand to take out the nine-toothed rake. The rake emitted a bright light. Wu, the nine-toothed rake flew across the sky, tearing the void, and hit the shell with a boom. Unfortunately, where the light landed, the five-colored halo brought out several strange patterns, and actually blocked the nine-toothed rake. Damn it! Tunshin couldn't keep his face, and waved the nine-toothed rake again. If this old man imprisons this monster again, it will be said that the strong are bullying the weak. Xiaohua laughed and removed the imprisonment. The five-colored monster loosened its body, and hurriedly urged its divine ability to fight against Tunshin. You don't need to think about escaping. Xiaohua saw that the five-colored monster wanted to fight while retreating, and immediately said with a smile, "You can't escape from this old man's hands. This old man also won't attack you. If you can win against these juniors, you only need to tell me how you know this old man, and this old man will let you go." The junior heard that Taoist Master Zhao's words carry enormous weight. I hope you all remember what you said now. The five-colored monster's body was a shellfish, and when it fanned its two hard shells, the five-colored halo danced in the surrounding 100 miles. Seeing that the halo couldn't fly more than half a foot, the five-colored monster knew that it couldn't escape, and hurriedly dealt with Tunshin while answering. Boom! In the instant that he was distracted, the nine-toothed rake smashed into one of his shells, causing the five-colored light to become chaotic, which was a rare sight. Seeing that the nine-toothed rake was only able to cause the five-colored shell to shake, the heaven-devouring beast let out an angry roar. Although the roar was like a pig's snort, the strands of lightning mixed with the wind soared into the sky and landed on the five-colored shell with a rumble, dispersing the five-colored light and revealing the demon's shell. Xiaohua coldly snorted. If he didn't say anything, how could he personally attack? Xiaohua could not help but frown as he watched the heaven-devouring beast and the five-colored demon race fight for a while. The heaven-devouring beast's strength was comparable to the borderline 9th-grade essence force on the elemental desolate continent. However, in the elemental paradise, due to the laws of heaven and earth, his divine abilities were greatly restricted. Currently, his essence force was merely at the upper 8th grade. Even though this five-colored demon race's strength was only at the lower stages of the 8th grade of essence force, its shell was very sturdy and the five-colored halo was very mystical. Under such circumstances, the sky-devouring demon race seemed to be on par with the five-colored demon race. Even if a winner could be determined, it would be a long time later. Xiaohua's strange teleportation to the snowy mountain had already shocked the Thunder Temple. Moreover, Namwamethreya Buddha still wanted to achieve enlightenment. Xiaohua didn't want to attract the attention of Mahavairakana, so he glanced at Yuan Tongtian, who had already opened his eyes and said coldly, "How are your injuries?" "If Shinran Xiao knows, I won't die." Yuan Tongtian almost called out the word master. But seeing Xiaohua's appearance, he didn't dare to be too sure. Of course, Patriarch Bodhi said clearly that he shouldn't call him master in the future, so Yuan Tongtian hurriedly changed the way he addressed Xiaohua. "That's good." Xiaohua waved his hand, took out the wishful steel rod, and threw it to Yuan Tongtian. "I'll lend you this thing first. Go kill this monster first." "Yes, Shinran." Seeing Xiaohua throw his weapon to him, Yuan Tongtian was really happy. After receiving it, he shouted, "Junior will not shame Shinran." Yuan Tongtian practiced the dragon transformation art, and his arms were infinitely strong, but the moment he received the wishful steel rod, his whole body couldn't help but fall a lot. But it was only a few breaths. Yuan Tongtian roared, waved the wishful steel rod, and rushed to the five-colored demon clan. The five-colored demon clan was already tired of resisting the Tunshin, so how could he handle Yuan Tongtian's addition? It was just a few rounds. Boom! The wishful steel rod fell on the five-colored halo, and the five-colored halo, which specialized in restraining the Buddhist light, dissipated in front of absolute power. Ka the moment the halo dissipated, the nine-toothed rake fell, and suddenly smashed several cracks in the shell. Puff puff puff. Just as the crack appeared, the sound of wind whistling was heard in the air again. Several pale white shadows fell, and pierced into the crack again, piercing deep into the shell. They were the bone spikes that had been hidden in the air for a long time. While the five-colored demon clan cried out in pain, and the two shells couldn't help but open. Puff the Tunshin's pig nose had already spewed out lightning, and it took advantage of the gap to hit the five-colored demon clan inside the shell. Zalala under the lingering lightning, The halo above the shell was shattered, and when the light disappeared, the strange texture on the shell was also smoothed out. Demon, looking for a beating, Yuan Tongtian was excited, and the wishful steel rod in his hand fell on the demon clan's shell. Without the 5-colored light, the shell was like fragile glass, and with a crack it was shattered. However, compared to the heaven-devouring beast, Yuan Tongtian's strike was nothing. The heaven-devouring beast raised its front hoof and smashed down like a mountain. Boom! With a loud bang, all the shells in its path were shattered. Moreover, a huge pig's hoof mark appeared on the 5-colored body. Chapter 4285. Damn it, this is probably the most powerful pig I've ever seen. Zhenfeng couldn't help but send a voice transmission to Zhenhan. Unfortunately, Zhenhan turned a deaf ear to Zhenfeng's words, as if she was thinking about something else. If you dare to touch me, my ancestor will definitely not let you off. The 5-colored shellfish lost its support, and could only shout loudly, trying to struggle. Taoist Master Xiao Samantabhadra hurriedly sent a voice transmission. This monster is right. Its ancestor is indeed very difficult to deal with. Even Mahavairakana doesn't want to cause too much trouble. Taoist Master doesn't need to be too difficult. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then raised his hand and pointed. His right index finger was like a bolt of lightning, instantly landing on the shellfish monster's body. Not good. The monster was shocked, but he only had a thought before Xiaohua's index finger landed on his body like the annihilation of heaven and earth. All the surrounding light and shadow were covered by this index finger. Damn it, how could the monster not know what Xiaohua wanted to do? Just as he felt the whole world sink into darkness, he cursed inwardly. The 5-colored halo immediately became chaotic, and a powerful destructive wave was born from the monster's body. Xiaohua coldly snorted, then raised his hand and grabbed. The 5-colored halo instantly became still, and his finger still landed on the monster's body paper. However, it was only for a moment, and the 5-colored halo became chaotic again, and the wave was still rushing out. Oh, Xiaohua was slightly stunned, and the corner of his mouth revealed disdain as he said, "Since you want to die? Then I'll fulfill your wish." Kill, Xiaohua ordered without hesitation, then raised his hand and grabbed. The chaotic 5-colored halo fell into the air. Xiaohua took out the sword gourd and withdrew the 5-colored halo. On the other side, devouring heaven's 9-toothed rake had already hit the monster's body. Pooh! With a sound, 9 extremely deep holes appeared on the shellfish's body. Namo Methriya Buddha Chunzong couldn't help but chant when he saw Tunshin kill the 5-colored demon. Excellent, excellent. In fact, Yuan Tongtian's wishful staff was not much slower than the devouring sky beast. However, before the wishful staff fell, Yuan Tongtian hesitated for a moment. It was in this moment that the devouring sky beast killed the 5-colored demon race. Yuan Tongtian stole a glance at Xiaohua, fearing that Xiaohua would scold him. However, at that moment, Xiaohua's brows were tightly furrowed. Evidently, he was still furious and did not pay attention to Yuan Tongtian. Sage Yuan Tongtian couldn't help but ask, "Is that demon? You don't have to ask." Xiaohua mercilessly interrupted Yuan Tongtian's question. He raised his hand and put away the monster's 5-colored shell. He then pointed at the sword gourd that he didn't put away. A fist-sized 5-colored light flew out. This 5-colored light wasn't from the monster just now. Xiaohua had obtained it from the Eldritch continent. This light fell in front of Yuan Tongtian. Xiaohua said, "This old man is fated to meet you. This thing is for you." Yuan Tongtian's heart warmed, but he didn't accept the 5-colored light. Instead, he bowed and said, "This junior has a small request. I don't know if I should say it or not." "Say it." Xiaohua was in a bad mood. He glanced at Yuan Tongtian and said casually, "Senior, although the magic wand in this junior's hand was given to me by my master, it is no longer of great use. This junior is reluctant to throw it away. If someone takes pity on this junior, can this magic wand be given to me?" Yuan Tongtian carefully raised the wishful staff above his head and asked respectfully. Xiaohua was stunned. He didn't expect Yuan Tongtian to have such a request. However, looking at the wishful staff in Yuan Tongtian's hand, Xiaohua was a little embarrassed. At this time, the wishful staff was no longer suitable for Xiaohua to use. Xiao Hua had obtained the refining method of the 5 elements wishful heavenly staff, and 3 of the 5 elements magnetism. As for the whereabouts of the other 2, Xiao Hua already had an idea. As long as he found the opportunity, it was possible to refine the real 5 elements wishful heavenly staff. There was no problem in giving the wishful staff to Yuan Tongtian. Of course, among Xiao Hua's direct disciples, Yuanya was also suitable to use the wishful staff. However, Yuanya already had the bone dragon devil spear, so there was no need to give the wishful staff to him. However, at this time, Yuan Tongtian was protecting Chuanzong. The sutra-seeking bliss was a product of the compromise between the Buddhist sect and the Confucian cultivators. Although Yuan Tongtian had already intervened in the sutra-seeking bliss, Xiao Hua could be regarded as the 4th force in the sutra-seeking bliss in addition to the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect and the demon race. However, Xiao Hua had no interest in sharing any benefits from the sutra-seeking bliss. He told Yuan Tongtian to protect Jiang Lu or only to protect Jiang Lu's safety. It had nothing to do with any benefits. However, if Xiao Hua gave the wishful staff to Yuan Tongtian at this time, even if Yuan Tongtian had nothing to do with Xiao Hua, those Confucian cultivators who could turn black into white would immediately let their imaginations run wild. Needless to say, Yuan Tongtian was originally related to Xiao Hua. With Xiao Hua's current cultivation and strength, it would be a joke to say that he was afraid of the Buddhist sect and the Confucian cultivators. However, if this caused a dispute, Xiao Hua felt that it was not worth it. Therefore, Xiao Hua looked at Yuan Tongtian's sincere face and said with a smile, "This old man can't give it to you now. If you like it, this old man will keep it for you first. After the sutra-seeking bliss, when you return from the Thunder Temple, this old man will give it to you." Really? Yuan Tongtian was overjoyed. He somersaulted in the air and said with a smile, "Taoist master must keep this thing well. This junior has already escorted Chuanzong master back from the Thunder Temple. Now that we have passed by the Great Snow Mountain, we will soon return to the hidden immortal continent." "What?" Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and hurriedly asked. "You have already been to the Thunder Temple since the Longevity Town? You have already returned with the Mahayana Buddhist Sutra?" Yuan Tongtian's eyes turned rapidly. Thinking of the vision just now, he understood Xiao Hua's thoughts and hurriedly replied respectfully, "Let Taoist master know. If we count from the time Chuanzong master left the Longevity Town, it has already been 218 years. Taoist master must have gone to other places, so you don't know about this matter." Hearing that it was only 218 years, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh of relief and thought to himself, "That's good. Only 200 years. Oh, if we count it this way, this Xiao has been in the ruins for 100 years, and in the great desolate continent for another 100 years. The two added together is similar to the time of the 3 continents. In the heavenly prison. Haha, just treat it as a moment of seclusion." Then, Xiao Hua nodded at Yuan Tongtian and said, "That's right, this old man has some matters to attend to. I just returned from another place, and happened to encounter this matter. This old man will temporarily keep it for you. After you escort Chuanzong back to the Longevity Town, and complete the sutra-seeking bliss, feel free to come find me." With that, Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and kept the wishful staff. Taoist master, if it was any other time, Yuan Tongtian would naturally not ask, but at this time he was worried about his gains and losses, so he hurriedly asked, "When the time comes, where can this junior find senior?" "Do you still need to ask?" Xiao Hua rolled his eyes in annoyance, no longer paying attention to Yuan Tongtian, and looked at the sky-devouring beast. Seeing that Xiao Hua ignored him, Yuan Tongtian became depressed again, but after a while, he laughed involuntarily. At this time, Xiao Hua's strength was already at the 9th level of essence force, and he was already the focus of attention in the 3 continents. Where he was there still a need to ask? Was there still a need for Xiao Hua to tell him personally? Yuan Tongtian could not help but laugh. While Yuan Tongtian was rejoicing, Xiao Hua said to the sky-devouring beast, "That's right. Jieqi, you just arrived in the 3 continents and already made a great contribution in front of the Maitreya Buddha. Now that the sutra-seeking bliss is not over yet, if you still want to protect the Maitreya Buddha's physical body in this life, Now is the best opportunity. The sky-devouring beast had been anxiously waiting at the side, looking at Chunzong several times. He had only seen Chunzang's appearance in the shrine in the Void Continent. Now that Chunzong was standing in front of him, how could he not be excited? Hearing Xiaohua's words, the sky-devouring beast hurriedly flew to Chunzong, kowtowed to the clouds, and said respectfully, "Master, please accept a bow from this disciple. This disciple is willing to escort Master to the sutra-seeking bliss." Ah? Chunzong could not take it anymore. The change was too sudden, and he really did not know how to deal with it. He looked at the sky-devouring beast in astonishment, then looked at Xiaohua, and finally his gaze landed on Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva also smiled bitterly. The sky-devouring beast was an expert whose strength surpassed his. How could he decide whether the sky-devouring beast stayed or left? Furthermore, he did not know the origin of the sky-devouring beast, but he clearly saw the fluctuations of the laws of heaven and earth falling on the sky-devouring beast's body. In other words, the sky-devouring beast's true strength might not be at the upper stage of the 8th level of essence force. Such an expert actually wanted to become Chunzang's disciple and escort him back to the hidden immortal continent. How could Chunzong encounter any more calamities? The future arrangements of the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect would be messed up. Such a big matter. How could he make the decision? Not only did Samantabhadra Bodhisattva not know whether to laugh or cry, but even Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and Zhenhan looked at each other. If the sky-devouring beast was not too strong, Dragon Vein Zhenfeng would have jumped out and scolded the sky-devouring beast. "I've seen people picking peaches, but I've never seen such a brazen way of picking peaches." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva wanted Chunzong to reject the sky-devouring beast, but looking at the sky-devouring beast and Xiaohua, he could not afford to offend either of them. However, a bodhisattva was a bodhisattva. He thought quickly and calmly bowed to Buddha Bodhi beside him and said, "Namantabhadra Buddha, please make a decision on this matter." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya could shirk responsibility, so could Buddha Bodhi. He smiled and said, "Namo Maitreya Buddha, I am not the Buddha Lord yet. How about we talk about this after I settle the karma between me and Chuanzong?" Namantabhadra Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was somewhat puzzled, but he still respectfully said, "This disciple will listen to the Buddha Lord's arrangement." Buddha Bodhi looked at Chunzong, who was standing beside Xiaohua in the distance. With a benevolent expression, he walked step by step towards Chunzong. With each step, an 8-grade lotus throne would appear under his feet. With each step, the void would emit the mournful cries of 10,000 Buddhas. With each step, a sweet rain would fall from the sky. This sweet rain was like the weeping of heaven and earth. It also seemed that the Buddha was moved by Buddha Bodhi's sacrifice. Chapter 4286. Chuanzong Bodhi walked in front of Chuanzong and shrunk to Chuanzong's size. His eyes were apologetic as he said, "This poor monk coincidentally took away your fortune. Now I will return it all to you." Before Bodhi could finish his words, the sky was filled with heavenly flowers. Countless Buddhist lotuses bloomed halfway up the snowy mountain. The entire world was shaking. A heavenly voice echoed in the sky. Goodness, sorrow. Following this voice, Bodhi and Chuanzong's bodies emitted incomparably dazzling Buddhist light. Namo Amitba. Bodhi chanted the name of Buddha and raised his hand. A fist-sized lotus formed from Buddha light emerged from his finger and slowly landed between Chuanzong's eyebrows. Boom! A golden light visible to the naked eye rushed out from the top of Chunzang's head and turned into a Buddhist lotus that was several acres in size. This Buddhist lotus seemed to be at the 9th rank, but it also seemed to have surpassed the 9th rank. However, in just a short moment, all of its appearances more or less disappeared, and then retracted into Chunzang's head. At this time, Chunzang's eyes were pure. He had completely understood all of the karma. His gaze was like lightning as it fell on Buddha Bodhi's golden body that was slowly collapsing and turning into golden liquid. Bodhi's arm was still raised and there were still remnants of the Buddhist light on his finger. Namo Maitreya. Chuanzong smiled, and also raised his finger and pointed at Bodhi's finger. Boom! The moment the two fingers touched, endless Buddhist light came out from the two fingers. The space within 100 feet folded and collapsed. One by one, Buddhist kingdoms were annihilated. There were even strands of black energy that resembled devilish energy floating out from the Buddhist kingdoms. Chuanzong's expression didn't change in the face of this abnormality. He only said, "Buddhist Lord is wrong. Tribulation is fate and fate is tribulation. Karma is karma and karma is passing. Chuanzong's tribulation is Buddhist Lord's fate. Buddhist Lord's karma is Chuanzong's karma. Perhaps the previous merits belong to Chuanzong, but they also belong to Namomethria. Now that Chuanzong is no longer Namomethria, these merits don't belong to Chuanzong anymore. Chuanzong has his own path and Buddhist Lord also has his own path. Chuanzong doesn't know where Buddhist Lord's path is, but Buddhist Lord already knows where Buddhist Lord's path is. Therefore, if it belongs to Buddha Lord, please take it away. If it belongs to Chuanzong, please return it to Chuanzong." Boom! The whole world shook again, and a clear sound of nature descended from the sky. Sorrow, goodness. The two sounds were both of sorrow and goodness, but the order of the two sounds was different, and there was a great difference in meaning. Unfortunately, at this time, Xiaohua didn't have time to understand because the Tree of Seven Wonders was unable to stop the golden body of Buddha's light from falling. Moreover, as Chuanzong's finger fell on Buddha Bodhi's finger, under the golden light, Buddha Bodhi's golden body of Buddha Bodhi actually became solid and transparent. Obviously, Chuanzong refused to accept Buddha Bodhi's ancient fortune from the untainted land, and all the merits of his previous lives. He refused to accept the Buddha's fruit of Namomethria. Lu, or Xiaohua couldn't help but be anxious and shouted, "What are you doing? This originally belonged to you." The words Lu are called to Chuanzong's heart. Chuanzong smiled, but the flying snow in the sky turned into mysterious heavenly flowers. He said, "I don't need any Buddha's fruit, worship, or merits. What I want to do is to pass this Buddhist scripture, whether it's a Mahayana Buddhist scripture or a small success Buddhist scripture, into everyone's heart." But Xiaohua was extremely puzzled and said, "There's no contradiction between passing the Buddhist scripture and attaining the fruit. If you attain the fruit of Namomethria, wouldn't it be more convenient for you to pass the Buddhist scripture? I was Namomethria in my previous life. No one knows this better than I." Chuanzong didn't explain and said, "I have already made up my mind. Reverend, you don't need to say any more. I was Namomethria in my previous life. No one knows this better than I." Chuanzong didn't explain and said, "I have already made up my mind. Reverend, you don't need to say any more." %yen hashtag and in the exquisite temple, Dragon Horse Zhenfeng couldn't help but mutter a few words in dragon language. Although his voice was soft, Chuanzong Han could hear it clearly. He didn't understand what Dragon Horse Zhenfeng was saying, but looking at Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's face and gnashing teeth, Chuanzong Han smiled bitterly. How could he not know that Dragon Horse Zhenfeng was cursing and scolding Chuanzong? These words were definitely the same as the words that he had cursed in his heart more than 10,000 times. It's just that Chuanzong Han didn't say it out loud. Sure enough, Longma Zhenfeng transmitted his voice again. "Damn, is this monk crazy? Could it be that 10 years ago he was captured by the Golden Pheasant Empress in the Phoenix Nest mountain range and failed to get married, and since then he lost his mind? Seeing the Buddhist scripture that he cultivated for 9 lifetimes in front of him, he actually doesn't want it. What is he thinking? Does he want to get the Lei Yin Temple's reward of not pocketing money, or being a good person?" Chuanzong Han also transmitted his voice. "That's right. I am also puzzled. This monk must have gone crazy from chanting scriptures, or his high fever from a few days ago has not subsided. Now his brain is damaged. This is clearly his own merit and not someone else's. Now that he is giving it back, how can he refuse? He is really stupid." Dragon Horse Zhenfeng scolded again and shouted, "I have called him master for 200 years. Isn't it all for this day? He doesn't want this Buddhist scripture. What should we do? I am carrying this bullshit scripture. Do I really have to send it to Longevity Town?" Chuanzong Han was also very regretful in his heart. He wished he could fly over and replace Chuanzong. Then he vigorously nodded his head. His grandmother, what is the purpose of cultivation? What is the purpose of walking step by step for 200 years? How can he let go of such a fatty meat that was delivered to his mouth? While everyone was still puzzled, the Buddha statue had already landed on top of Bodhi's head, and was about to land on his head. Buddha Bodhi was somewhat flustered. He hurriedly lowered his body, wanting to dodge. Unfortunately, Buddha Bodhi's body was somewhat similar to lightning tribulation. Although the Buddha light was faint, under the Buddha light, Buddha Bodhi's body was unable to move. While Buddha Bodhi was flustered, Xiaohua was also anxious. In the great desolate continent's Chaotian palace, he had a falling out with Buddha Bodhi and almost killed him. Wasn't his purpose to leave the opportunity for Jiang Luo? Who knew that at this time, Jiang Luo would actually refuse? This was something Xiaohua had never thought of. Xiaohua slapped his head. Clang, a loud sound was heard. Above his head, the light of the stars and the moon soared into the sky. Although the surrounding space had already been enveloped by the Buddha light, the brilliance of the stars and the moon still stubbornly squeezed into the nearby void. Then, boom boom boom, a violent roar was heard from the top of the big snow mountain. The power of the stars and the moon penetrated the void and rushed into Xiaohua's body. This vast power of the stars and the moon was like the Milky Way hanging upside down, causing the Buddha light to sway a little. Ah? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Nama was shocked and said anxiously, "Senior, what are you doing? This is the Buddha light of my Buddha kingdom. It's not an ordinary method." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo had just finished speaking when his words came to an abrupt halt. His eyes even flashed with horror as he looked at Xiaohua. As the starlight fell, Xiaohua's avatar suddenly expanded. In just a moment, it was already 1,000 zhang in size. Moreover, as the endless starlight fell, the avatar's golden avatar directly rushed up. It seemed that it was not impossible for it to reach 100,000 zhang. As soon as Xiaohua's Dharma idol was formed, both of his hands immediately assumed the posture of holding up the sky. A several hundred zhang tall golden light phantom emerged from Xiaohua's hands and held up the descending Buddha's aura golden body. Creak creak. Xiaohua's aura golden body emitted an obscure movement, and the entire space shook. Under everyone's stupefied gaze, the Buddha's aura golden body that even the wonderful Seven Treasures tree couldn't block was actually blocked by Xiaohua in midair. Soon after, Xiaohua's godlike voice resounded. "Chuanzong, I know that you have some misgivings in your heart. Before you complete the sutra seeking extreme bliss, you don't dare to reach the Buddha realm. Today this old man will tell you one thing. Whether it is immortal Emperor Go Chen from the Immortal Palace or the Thunder Temple's Mahavairakana revered Buddha, you don't need to think too much about it. No matter what they said to you, no matter what they promised you, you don't need to care about it. As long as your heart wants to reach the Buddha realm, you can feel at ease and reach the Buddha realm. Let this bullshit sutra seeking extreme bliss go to hell. Everything will be decided by this old man for you." Chuanzong's heart was filled with warmth as tears flowed down from his eyes. He respectfully kneeled in the air and kowtowed. Enlightened one, please know that Lu truly doesn't want to reach the Buddha realm. I also truly want to complete the sutra seeking extreme bliss to the end. Enlightened one, please understand and give this Buddha fruit to this senior." His Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. At this moment, the Buddhist light on his hands suddenly increased in strength, and the surrounding space collapsed. Numerous enormous heavenly dragons appeared one after another, and every single one of them had an aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth. This was the Buddha light of the Buddha kingdom's Buddha fruit. Although the Buddha light was merciful and would never casually kill a living being, Xiaohua was able to stop others from reaching the Buddha realm. The Buddha's demon annihilation lightning was not given for nothing. Aowo 10,000 dragons roared as they pounced toward Xiaohua. Although Xiaohua had already sealed the space around him, the power of the dragon avatar still smashed this space into pieces. Chuanzong Xiaohua's voice was hoarse as he shouted, "This old man will ask you one last time. Have you made your decision?" Seeing Xiaohua's martial prowess, Chuanzong's eyes lit up. However, he still took in a long breath and said word by word, "Yes, enlightened one, this junior has already made his decision. Enlightened one, please withdraw your divine ability. Don't regret it in the future." Xiaohua clenched his teeth. He still didn't dare to relax and asked again. Chuanzong's tears gushed out again as he said, "This junior has no regrets." Chapter 4287. Xiaohua's arm trembled a few times, and the Buddha Radiance golden body fell a few dozen feet. Xiaohua's body also fell a few dozen feet, and Buddha Bodhi also fell a few dozen feet. Xiaohua asked again, "In the future, don't blame me for not giving you a chance." Chunzong was a little bewildered, but he still nodded and said, "Don't worry, senior. I know what I'm doing, and I won't blame you. Moreover, I'll be grateful for everything you've done today." Sai Xiaohua seemed to have aged a lot. He sighed and his figure shook. He easily escaped from the Buddha Radiance golden body and landed in front of Chunzong. He helped him up and asked in confusion, Why are you so decisive?" Chunzong held Xiaohua's arm. The care and warmth from Xiaohua's arm made him feel incomparably safe. He wiped away the tears on his face and said with a smile, "I have my own plans. There's no need to ask, enlightened master. Moreover, since the opportunity has already been obtained by that senior, this is also Buddha's arrangement. I don't want to fight for anything." "All right." Xiaohua nodded helplessly. He looked at the Buddha radiance rising like a scorching sun in the distance and smiled bitterly. "Even if you want to go back on your words now, I'm afraid you can't." Without Xiaohua's obstruction, the Buddha radiance golden body rushed towards Buddha Bodhi's head like a falling star. Even if Buddha Bodhi wanted to dodge now, he wouldn't have the chance to do so. Namo Methriya Buddha, Namo Methriya Buddha. Countless Buddhist chants seemed to come from different realms. Endless heavenly flowers completely covered the entire snowy mountain. Groups of fairies swayed their waists, bounced off the pipa, and clustered around. The heavenly dragon that wanted to kill Xiaohua earlier also became docile at this time, dancing in the void and congratulating him. The previous phenomena appeared 10 times, 100 times more. Moreover, on the left and right of the Buddha Bodhi, countless Buddha kingdoms transformed into scattered lights and surged out. The Mahavairakana World Lord and the Dipankara Archaic Buddha World Lord's Buddha phantoms also appeared amidst the scattered lights. The merciful and joyful expressions on their faces filled the entire blessed land world's emotions. And they started surging out from the sky. Disciple respectfully welcomes Namo Dang Lai Methriya to the Pure Land world. At this moment, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's heart was finally at ease. He knelt in front of the Buddha Bodhi and pressed his palms together. At this moment, the Buddha Bodhi's entire body shone with golden radiance. Just like the Buddha radiance from before, the radiance behind his head displayed boundless divine abilities. Countless rivers of faith vaguely seeped out from the radiance, and countless Buddha kingdom phenomena also appeared amidst the radiance. The myriad Buddha diagram on the Buddha Bodhi's body transformed into billions of Buddha statues, which surrounded him. Each of them had their palms pressed together, and they were as pious as the Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Namo Methriya Buddha, Amitabhadra. Amitabhadra the Buddha Bodhi chanted, and his appearance that was identical to Chuanzong started to turn turbid and blurry. The swastika symbol between his brows gradually became clearer and condensed. Woo woo at this moment. A strange roar came from the shadows between the Buddha radiance. Strange demonic energy gushed out from the shadows like ghosts, and wherever it passed, the Buddha radiance and the Buddha shadow would turn pitch black. Even the goddesses had turned into Rakshasas, and the celestial dragons had turned into demonic dragons. However, to everyone's surprise, as soon as the demon statues appeared, another demon clan's aura, which was not very powerful but even more bizarre, appeared. Wherever this demon clan's aura passed, all the demon chi retreated in defeat. Aolo aolo, a series of ghostly wails and howls came from the void, as if someone had stepped on a dog's tail. As soon as this sound came out, all the demon statues disappeared completely. At the same time, the bizarre demon clan's aura also flashed and disappeared without a trace. Namo Methriya Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva beamed with joy, and his heart was completely at ease. As the saying goes, Buddha is 1 foot tall, the devil is 10 feet tall. The golem's test for Buddhas was the most difficult, especially for a supreme Buddha like Maitreya. At the very least, the Tusita Buddha celestial demon would appear. When Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was trying to attain Buddhahood, he had been attacked by the celestial demon and almost destroyed his Buddhahood. Now that he thought about it, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva had a deep impression of it. So when Buddha Bodhi attained Buddhahood, his heart clenched. However, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was still a little surprised. The demonic tribulation had disappeared too easily, and the sudden appearance of the demonic aura was even stranger. It was as if the celestial demon had been scared away by the appearance of the demonic aura. Dang, when the Buddha bell rang for the last time, the phenomena of attaining Buddhahood above the great snow mountain gradually disappeared. A rainbow bridge descended from the void and landed at Buddha Bodhi's feet. At this time, the swastika symbol between Buddha Bodhi's eyebrows had already formed, and the appearance of the Buddha radiance had also been revealed. To Xiaohua's surprise, Buddha Bodhi's appearance was different from his and Jiang Luer's. It was actually the appearance of Namo Maitreya Buddha on the myriad Buddha diagram. Sandalwood Buddha Bodhi's voice resounded in Xiaohua's heart. When a Buddha Lord attains Buddhahood, it's the same as when a Taoist cultivator attains nascent soul. They can choose their original form or Buddha form. If they choose Buddha form, then their original form will be hidden. Even the Mahavairakana World Lord and the Dipankara Archaic Buddha wouldn't be able to discover their original form. Haha, good. Xiaohua also laughed in his heart. In this way, even the two Buddha Lords wouldn't be able to know that Master is Ai's clone? That should be the case. However, this monk doesn't know if there will be an exception. Buddha Bodhi answered calmly. Don't worry about it. Xiaohua instructed. If you can hide it, then hide it. If you can't hide it, then be honest. I won't do anything to harm your Buddhism. You don't have to worry. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Bodhi, who was already the Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord, chanted Buddha's name in his heart. I am your Buddha incarnation, and also one of your thousands of thoughts. Your thoughts are my thoughts. If you didn't have good intentions, how could you have refined my Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord's Buddha fruit? Xiaohua smiled and didn't say anything. Buddha Lord Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya said respectfully, in the Thunder Sound Temple, not only are the two World Lords waiting for Buddha Lord, there are also other Buddha Lords, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, Heavenly Kings, and others waiting to congratulate Buddha Lord. In this disciple's opinion, we should return to the Thunder Sound Temple as soon as possible. Namo Maitreya Buddha Namo Maitreya chanted Buddha's name, and stepped onto the rainbow bridge condensed from Buddha's light. He put his palms together and said, Taoist Xiao, we will meet again if fate allows. Congratulations to Great Master for achieving Buddha fruit. Xiaohua bowed and said, I respectfully send Great Master off. This disciple respectfully sends Namo Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord Chuanzong didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly bowed. Zhen Kong, Zhen Han, Zhen Feng, and the others also hurriedly bowed and sent them off. Instead, it was Devouring Heaven who raised his hand and called out, That? Buddha Lord Bodhisattva, is it okay for me to become your disciple? Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, Namo Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord raised his hand, and a ball of golden light flew out from his hand and landed in between Chuanzong's eyebrows. When that golden light came into contact with Chuanzong's skin, it immediately disappeared without a trace. Chuanzong was startled, but his eyes revealed a knowing smile. He said, Namo Maitreya Buddha, many thanks for the Buddha Lord's blessing. If it's Buddhism, give it to Namo Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord. If it's Chuanzong, return it to Chuanzong. Namo Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord smiled slightly and said some inexplicable words. His body emitted Buddhist light and soared into the sky. Namo Maitreya Buddha Samantabhadra also stepped on a Buddhist lotus and followed beside him. In just a few breaths of time, the two disappeared. Damn it! Before Chuanzong and the others could get up, Devouring Heaven shouted, What the hell is going on? Is he still letting people become his disciple? Xiaohua looked at Chuanzong with a smile, and then looked at Devouring Heaven. He turned his head and scolded Yuan Tongtian. You don't have good eyesight. Hurry up and help your master down. Yes, master, please. Yuan Tongtian heard and hurriedly helped Chuanzong down from the sky. Devouring Heaven flew over and grabbed Xiaohua and asked, Enlightened master, what do you think is going on? Am I still going to become his disciple? Did Bodhisattva stop you? Xiaohua asked with interest. No. Maitreya Buddha didn't let you become his disciple. Xiaohua asked again. Devouring Heaven squinted his small eyes and shook his head again. No. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and shrugged. He smiled and said, "Isn't that the case? They didn't stop you. Why can't you become his disciple?" "Master, please accept a bow from your disciple." Devouring Heaven kowtowed in front of the exquisite temple, making a small hole in the ground. Chuanzong's eyes showed a strange color. He looked at Devouring Heaven, as if he was thinking about something. He then raised his head and asked Xiaohua, "Enlightened Master, why is this? Why does this child insist on becoming my disciple? If he wants to cultivate, he can become Senior's disciple." "Of course there's a secret behind it," Xiaohua smiled, and explained the matter of the Devouring the Heavens general merits atonement. In the end, he said, he entered Buddhism when he was young and served your previous life wholeheartedly. Now that he has the chance to help you seek the Sutra of Extreme Bliss, you should fulfill his wish. Actually, Chuanzong opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he hesitated. He paused and said, "Sutra seeking in extreme bliss is far from as simple as Enlightened Master thinks. Hee. It doesn't matter if it is simple or not. As long as you safely reach Longevity Town, this old man doesn't care about other complicated matters." Xiaohua waved his hand and stopped Chuanzong's explanation. Chapter 4288. Chuanzong thought for a moment and said to Tunshin, "Namo Amitba, since you are willing to become my disciple and preach Buddhism, then I am willing to accept you as my disciple. Thank you, Master." Tunshin was overjoyed and kowtowed. Chuanzong supported Tunshin and said solemnly, "Don't worry, I still have a few words to say. If you can understand them, then you can agree." "Okay." Tunshin agreed without hesitation. "My name is Chun, and my disciples are all Zhen. Your Dharma name will be Zhenjia." "Yes, Master." "Master's path is far from being as smooth as you think. The sutra seeking in bliss is just the beginning. Master still has a long way to go. I'm afraid that even if I exhaust all my strength in this lifetime, I won't be able to reach the end. If you become my disciple, you'll have to suffer a lot. You have to understand. Disciple has committed too many sins. If I don't follow Master, how can I atone for those sins? The harder Master's path is, the happier disciple will be." "What are you saying?" Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Good, if that's the case, then from today onwards, you are my disciple." Chuanzong smiled and touched Zhenjia's head. Namo Amitba. Zhenjia chanted Buddha's name sincerely, and a layer of Buddha's aura appeared around him. This Xiaohua was a little surprised. Luer's cultivation is now completely gone. He's just an ordinary monk. The merit of praying for the scriptures in nirvana hasn't been realized yet. Could it be that Luer has other opportunities? Could there be something else with the golden aura that Namo Amitba gave him? Xiaohua was puzzled, but Chuanzong smiled and said to Zhenjia, "Zhenjia, get up. Let me introduce you to my disciples." Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and Zhenhan were already waiting at the side. When they saw Chuanzong talking, they hurried over. Chuanzong pointed at Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and said, "This is Zhenfeng." "Greetings, Master." Dragon Horse Zhenfeng didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly raised his head to pay his respects. However, he suddenly froze because Chuanzong didn't say who was the senior and who was the junior. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng hurriedly looked at Chuanzong. However, Chuanzong did not even look at him. He pointed at Zhenhan and said, "This is Zhenhan." "Greetings, senior brother." Zhenhan was so cunning that she didn't even wait for Chuanzong to finish before hurriedly bowing. And Zhenjia nodded at Zhenhan, returning the greeting. "This is Zhenkong, their eldest senior brother." Zhenkong hurriedly walked over. Chunzong pointed at Zhenkong and introduced him with a smile. "That's right, Zhenkong." Zhenjia smiled and patted Zhenkong's shoulder. "You have some skills. It's your fortune to be able to become Master's disciple." Zhenkong chuckled, and didn't want to say anything more. Zhenkong Chuanzong instructed, "The matter here is over. Pack your things, and I will follow you down the mountain." Master Zhenjia hurriedly asked, "Shouldn't we rest here for a few more days?" "No." Chuanzong shook his head. "The hidden immortal continent urgently needs the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures. The earlier we send them over, the earlier those bodhisattvas will be able to obtain our Buddha's light." Disciple understands. Seeing Zhenkong turn around to pack his things, Zhenjie had no choice but to follow him out of the temple. Chuanzong looked at Xiaohua and opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know how to speak. Chuanzong always had doubts about how he came to the Pure Land world, and how he came to the small golden temple. However, when he saw Xiaohua, all of his doubts were answered. There was no need for him to ask anything. As for Xiaohua, he wanted to ask Chuanzong why he didn't want the Namwu Methria Buddha fruit. However, when he thought of Chuanzong's determination, the golden light that the world-exalted Methria gave him before he left, and the phenomenon just now, he knew that Chuanzong must have some difficulties. Therefore, he decided not to ask. For a moment, the entire small exquisite temple became as lonely as snow. Outside the small exquisite temple, it was bustling with noise and excitement. When Zhenjie came out of the small exquisite temple, he pointed at Jin Kong and said, "Brat, listen. You are their senior brother, not mine. In the future, you have to call me eldest senior brother. Otherwise, I will beat you to death with my rake." Jin Kong shrugged with an indifferent expression on his face. He casually said, "No problem, eldest senior brother." His goal was to protect Chuanzong and complete Xiaohua's orders. He didn't care about being called eldest senior brother or second senior brother. "And you?" Zhenjie pointed at Zhenfeng and Zhenhan and said fiercely, "The two of you have to call me eldest senior brother as well. Otherwise, you will be beaten to death by my rake." "Yes, eldest senior brother." How could Zhenfeng and Zhenhan dare to talk back to Zhenjie? After all, Zhenjie's strength was comparable to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. "And not bad," Zhenjie said proudly. He raised his hand and took the Buddhist scripture from Zhenfeng's back and threw it to Zhenhan. "In the future, you don't need to protect Master. You can carry this thing." "Ah." Zhenhan was stunned. She caught the scripture and didn't know what to do. Zhenjie glared and said coldly, "What? You don't want to?" That's right, Zhenfeng was overjoyed. "These scriptures can't be placed in a spatial pouch. You have to carry them on your shoulders. Later, I will find a pole for you in the exquisite temple." "Humph, I don't need your help." "I have," Zhenhan snorted, and took out a weapon that looked like a crescent moon spade from her spatial pouch. She carried the scripture on her shoulders. Zhenfeng shouted happily, "Thank you, eldest senior brother. Thank you, eldest senior brother." "No need to thank me." Zhenjie smiled and waved his hand. "In the future, you just have to carry me." "Ah? What? Eldest senior brother?" Zhenfeng was stunned. Unfortunately, before he could say anything, Zhenjie landed on Zhenfeng's back and pressed down on him, causing Zhenfeng's hooves to tremble. "Motherfucker, get bigger." Zhenjie felt that its lower body was uncomfortable, so it raised its hoof and slapped Zhenfeng's butt. Yes, Zhenfeng wanted to cry but couldn't. He really wanted to roar at Zhenjie. "Damn it, I am the 10th prince of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace." However, he was afraid that if he said that, he would be killed by Zhenjie before the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace got the news. Huff huff, dragon horse. Zhenfeng's back became bigger, and Zhenjie felt extremely comfortable. In just a short moment, it actually started snoring. Hearing this snoring sound, Dragon Horse Zhenfeng was so scared that it didn't even dare to move, lest it startled this fiend. "Damn it, you deserve it." Zhenhan picked up the scripture and felt relaxed. Looking at Zhenjie's huge figure pressing down on the dragon horse's back, he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Zhenkong only looked coldly at Zhenjie for a few times before he focused his attention on that thin figure in the Linglong Temple. His previous hatred towards Xiaohua had now turned into longing and respect. "Senior in the exquisite temple," Chuanzong finally spoke. "Junior's origin is unknown. When Master saw Junior, Junior was staying in Shun River. Therefore, before Junior was accepted as Master's disciple, Junior was called Jiang Luer. In the future, Senior can call Junior Chuanzong or Junior Jiang Luer." Xiaohua smiled and raised his hand slightly. However, he stopped after raising his hand a little and said, "All right, Luer, I understand. You and I have met by fate. If you have any problems, don't hesitate to find me." "Yes, disciple understands." Chunzong bowed. "It wasn't the etiquette of the Buddhist sect," he said. "Disciple has a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. I don't dare to stay here any longer. I'll go down the mountain and rush to Longevity Town." All right, Xiaohua opened his mouth again. It seemed like he wanted to tell Jiang Luer about the technique of the crown on Yuan Tongtian's head. It also seemed like he wanted to tell Jiang Luer about Xiao Xianrui's longing for him. It also seemed like he wanted to tell Jiang Luer that the sutra-seeking nirvana was nothing but a farce. Chuanzong stood up with tears in his eyes. Silence was better than words. Go finally, Xiaohua opened his mouth. Now that this old man has returned, you can do whatever you want. Yes, Chunzong didn't say anything else. He turned around and walked out of the Linglong temple. Facing the dragon horse Zhenfeng's resentful gaze, Chunzong acted as if he didn't hear it. Holding his staff, he walked down the mountain path. Although it was the same path up and down the mountain, Chunzong believed that the scenery down the mountain would be different. Junior thanks spiritual master for saving my life. Zhenkong walked at the back. He looked back at Xiaohua, who was slowly walking out of the Linglong temple, and knelt on the ground again. And go. Xiaohua waved his hand and helped Zhenkong up. He took out some pills from his bosom and handed them to Zhenkong. These are some pills. Take them. Also, I'll keep the magic wand for you. When you come back from the longevity town, you can come and find me. Many thanks, senior. Zhenkong finally smiled. He jumped and chased after Chunzong. This fire ape has changed a lot. It's much more pleasing to the eye than before. Thunderbolt's spiritual master said. Xiaohua also sighed. AI, that's right. Not only can humans change, demons can also change. Previously, I only wanted to punish this guy. In order to let him protect Luer, I taught him a technique. Who would have thought that he was actually a filial demon, who couldn't forget everything that happened in the illusion? It's really beyond I's expectations. There are many unexpected things, Thunderbolt's spiritual master said with a smile. Not only Yuan Tongtian, there's also Jiang Luer. He actually abandoned the Buddha fruit that he cultivated for 9 lifetimes. What is he planning in his heart? I'm not sure. Perhaps Maitreya Buddha would know about this matter. Xiaohua shook his head. There must be some secret within that ball of golden light. When I left, I asked him. Thunderbolt's spiritual master said. The revered one also doesn't know what's within the golden light. It's just that when Luer rejected the Buddha fruit, this golden light strangely emerged from the remains of the ancient Sili. Furthermore, the revered one's Buddha consciousness and other divine abilities were also unable to probe it. When Luer said if it's Chunzong, then return it to Chunzong. This golden light was eager to give it a try. The revered one knew that this golden light was left behind by Namal Maitreya Buddha in his previous life. Chapter 4289. I hope Luer's choice is correct. At this moment, what else could Xiaohua say? He could only bless Chunzong. Also, Lightning Immortal raised his hand, and the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda appeared in his hand. Xiaohua asked curiously, Fellow Taoist, Wenxiu has no use for this thing. Didn't you give it to Fujiwen? Lightning Immortal rolled his eyes and said, I naturally gave it to Fujiwen. However, when Fujiwen was refining it, he found something inside. Oh, what is it? Xiaohua asked curiously. Is this what you meant by unexpected? Of course. Lightning Immortal's hand shook and a golden light flew out from the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Xiaohua reached out and grabbed it. It was in the shape of a key. This is... Xiaohua's figure shook. He hastily waved his hand and took out the other key he obtained from the Forgotten Realm of the Dragon Island. Sure enough, these 2 keys were very similar. Apart from the dragon patterns, they were practically identical. Damn, this thing is indeed somewhat interesting. Xiaohua took the 2 keys and narrowed his eyes. He looked at Lightning Immortal and said, one of them fell into the space crack from the dragon field. The other one is in the hands of Venerable Dragon God. This is probably the key to a secret place in the dragon field, or even the dragon world, right? Who knows? Lightning Immortal shrugged. I have no use for it. Only fellow Taoist is useful. Forget it, let's talk about this in the future. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said with a smile. In the end, this world's banquet will come to an end. Maitreya Buddha has attained enlightenment in the exquisite temple of the Great Snow Mountain. Today's banquet has already ended. It's time for us to leave. As for the future, I'm afraid there will be many Buddhas coming to pay their respects. This place will not be peaceful. Indeed, this place is no longer suitable for building a teleportation formation. The Thunderbolt Immortal knew what Xiaohua was talking about. He nodded in agreement and looked up at the sky. At this moment, all the phenomena in the sky had disappeared. However, as soon as the Buddhist kingdom phenomenon disappeared, a strange green-red dark cloud that was tens of thousands of miles in size appeared in the sky. These dark clouds seemed to be in the void, but also seemed to be in the clouds. They could not be seen clearly. However, an aura more solid than a mountain rock came out from the dark clouds. It transcended space and landed on Lightning Immortal's heart. After the Thunderbolt Immortal finished speaking, he probed, "Fellow Taoist, can you still hold on?" The Thunderclap Immortal's words were rarely abrupt, so it was impossible for others to know. However, Xiaohua raised his head as if nothing had happened. He nodded and said, "If it was before, perhaps I would be somewhat flustered. But now, I can still suppress it." "All right." The Thunderbolt Immortal nodded, but he still warned, "Even so, fellow Taoist, you must not be too careless." "All right, I understand." Xiaohua nodded. Standing in the air above the snowy mountain, he glanced at the master and disciples who were squirming on the mountain path like ants. He said in a low voice, "After sending them away, we still have to send one more person away." "Who?" The Thunderbolt Immortal was taken aback. However, he immediately understood and nodded. "Ah, that's right. In the end, it was time for him to leave. Send him away. I'll hide for a while." As he spoke, Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror. Using his magic power, he invited Sun Jian out from Shenhua continent, while the Thunderbolt Immortal returned to Shenhua continent. The moment Sun Jian landed in the air, he immediately became alert. He raised his head to look at the sky in astonishment, then bowed and said, "Greetings, Spiritual Master Xiao." "No need to be so polite." Xiaohua hurriedly raised his hand to help Sun Jian up. He said with a hint of loneliness, "In the future, when you see I, just call me fellow Taoist." "Oh." Sun Jian was taken aback. He instantly understood the meaning of Xiaohua's words. He hurriedly released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. However, after a moment, he was somewhat bewildered. He looked at Xiaohua with a hint of doubt in his eyes. "Spiritual Master, this is." Xiaohua raised his hand and pointed to the sky. He smiled and said, "Could it be that General Sun has forgotten? Back then, when I first met you, it was in the void crack above the Pure Land world." "I understand." When Sun Jian heard about the Pure Land world, he couldn't help but feel a burst of excitement. When he heard that this was the place where he first met Xiaohua, he sighed in his heart. When they met that day, Xiaohua had only just reached the 4th grade of origin energy. Sun Jian's strength firmly suppressed Xiaohua's. Now that they met again in the same place, he couldn't even compare to Xiaohua's back. However, when he thought about his current cultivation, Sun Jian felt grateful to Xiaohua. If it weren't for Xiaohua, how could he come back alive? How could he reach the peak of the 8th grade of origin energy? Suddenly, Sun Jian was shocked again. He hurriedly asked, "What's the current time in the 3 continents?" "General Sun doesn't need to worry." Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's only been 200 years since we were forced into the heavenly prison." "Good." When Sun Jian heard this, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He bowed and said, "Spiritual Master, please rest assured. I will definitely find out the true face of Sun Hao and take revenge for that day." "Hee, there's no need to rush the matter of revenge." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Your life is the most important. With your current strength, you may not be Sun Hao's opponent. You should first think of a plan to advance and retreat. And there's no need for Spiritual Master to worry about this." Sun Jian nodded. "Although I disdain this path, it doesn't mean I don't know how to do it. If someone dares to covet the Immortal Emperor's throne, I will definitely protect the Immortal Emperor by any means necessary." Speaking up to hear, Sun Jian probed again and asked, "I wonder what Spiritual Master plans to do? If possible, can Spiritual Master follow me to the Immortal Palace? With Spiritual Master's methods, you must be an honored guest of the Immortal Palace." Xiaohua looked at Sun Jian with a smile that wasn't a smile and said, "General can decide for the Immortal Emperor that I am an honored guest and not a prisoner?" Sun Jian's face was a little embarrassed. He smiled and said, "Spiritual Master's view of the immortal emperor is too narrow. The immortal emperor is definitely not the muddle-headed emperor that the scholarly cultivators speak of. General isn't the immortal emperor. How would you know what the immortal emperor thinks?" Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "One shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but one must have the heart to guard against others. This Xiao can't not be on guard. Moreover, if this Xiao has a grudge with the immortal emperor, I'm afraid I won't be able to meet General. If that's the case, it's better not to meet. You and I have traveled in the upper realm and have experienced life and death together. I believe in General's character. If you have any problems, you can come find me. If it's inconvenient for the immortal emperor to make a move, this Xiao won't be afraid of anything." Junior thanks Spiritual Master for believing in me. Sun Jian knew that Xiaohua was speaking from the bottom of his heart, and also knew what kind of promise Xiaohua needed. He bowed and said, "Junior's life and cultivation were given by Senior. Junior will definitely not disappoint Senior. Of course, Junior is a subject of the Immortal Palace and often has no choice. Therefore, Junior will definitely keep Senior's secret. Junior will definitely keep it a secret. As for other things, Junior can't not report to the Immortal Emperor truthfully. I hope Spiritual Master can understand." "Haha, good. You know more about these things than this Xiao." Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and helped Sun Jian up. "You can decide for yourself. However, to be honest, the Heavenly Prison is not a place that ordinary cultivators can go. Immortal Emperor Go Chen and the Virokana revered world sage can't go. If they aren't afraid of death, they can send people in. Spiritual Master must be joking." Sun Jian bitterly smiled and said, "What is the Heavenly Prison? How could Junior not know? Even if the Immortal Emperor knew about this, he would definitely not leak it. On the contrary, Spiritual Master, you are now the top cultivator of the 3 continents. Spiritual Master is a Dao cultivator, so you will definitely have some connections with my Immortal Palace. Spiritual Master must think clearly." Although Sun Jian didn't say it clearly, Xiaohua understood the meaning in his tone. He nodded and said, "You can go and report to Immortal Emperor Go Chen. That year, I once mentioned establishing a Dao sect at the Tongzhou country's Bloodsteel. That day, I was indeed a bit impulsive. However, now that I think about it, I don't have anything to regret. After all, the Dao sect is in a bleak situation under the suppression of the Confucian cultivators. After the trip to the upper realm, General should also know that there are 3,000 Dao cultivators in this world. Not only are there Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sects, my Dao sect is also a branch that cannot be ignored. Therefore, my original intention will not change. As a Dao sect cultivator, I will definitely do my best for the Dao sect. However, since I am in the Hidden Immortal Continent, I will abide by the rules of the Hidden Immortal Continent, and will not make things difficult for the Immortal Palace. After all, I will definitely give face to Immortal Emperor Go Chen. However, this Xiao will also say this first. I am willing to accept all open schemes and even conquests. However, if there is any conspiracy or backstabbing, this Xiao will definitely not let it go if I learn of it. At that time, even if I attack the Immortal Palace, don't blame me for not warning you in advance." Sun Jian smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, "Actually, why does Daoist have to put yourself in the Dao sect? With Daoist cultivation, you are more than qualified to be an immortal official of Confucian cultivators. However, as long as I offer the 5 Qis unification technique to the Immortal Emperor, what Daoist can obtain is far beyond what a Dao sect cultivator can obtain. Hee, what if this old man allows you to enter my fortune gate, and make you the vice gate master of my fortune gate? Are you willing?" Xiaohua asked rhetorically. Sun Jian shook his head slightly. There was no way he could answer. At the same time, he also understood what Xiaohua's answer was. He said again, "Junior can report these words to the Immortal Emperor. As for how the Immortal Emperor will deal with it, that is his business. However, in Junior's opinion, the Immortal Emperor will only be courteous to Daoist and will not use weapons. Rest assured, Daoist." "Oh, why?" Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. Sun Jian smiled and said, "Junior won't talk about the internal secrets of the Confucian cultivators. Senior is a supreme cultivator of the 3 continents. How long can you stay in the 3 continents? Even if I am an immortal emperor, I will not cause trouble. What the immortal emperor is most concerned about should be Taoist Fortune Gate. As for the disciples of the Fortune Gate, to be honest, they are like brothers to me. Most of them are magnanimous people. I really hope that the disciples of the Fortune Gate can coexist peacefully with the Immortal Palace in the future. Chapter 4290. Haha, don't worry. Xiaohua laughed. As long as this old man is in charge of the Fortune Gate will not be the Immortal Palace's enemy. If this old man isn't around, then it's not something this old man can worry about. Junior understands. After getting Xiaohua's promise, Sun Jian once again respectfully saluted and said, "There are spatial passages in other parts of the Pure Land that lead to the Immortal Palace. 200 years shouldn't have changed too much. However, I don't know the spatial tunnel to the hidden Immortal Continent. If you return to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range, I'm afraid it will be inconvenient." Your grandmother Xiaohua helplessly shook his head. "You even know about the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range? What other secrets can my Fortune Gate hide from you?" "What I know and what the Immortal Palace knows are 2 different things." Sun Jian smiled and answered without hesitation. "Forget it." Xiaohua waved his hand. "I want to go to the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm, so I won't be returning to the hidden Immortal Continent for now." 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm? Sun Wu frowned, thought for a moment, and said, "My Immortal Palace has a spatial passageway that leads to the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm. If Senior is willing to go to the Immortal Palace, there's no need to mention this matter again. This old man doesn't want to make things difficult for you." Xiaohua waved his hand. "At worst, this old man will directly fly over the North and South Seas." When Sun Jian heard that, his brows relaxed and he said with a smile, "That's not necessary. As far as I know, there is a space teleportation formation between the South Sea Dragon Palace and the North Sea Dragon Palace. You only need to go to the South Sea, and you can go directly to the North Sea Dragon Palace from the South Sea Dragon Palace." "North Sea Dragon Palace?" Xiaohua pinched his chin and said somewhat meaningfully, "This old man had once offended the North Sea Dragon Palace's 7th prince. Haha, with Senior's strength, as long as you don't offend the Dragon King of the North Sea Dragon Palace, a few princes are nothing." Sun Jian smiled, then took out a jade eye from his bosom and respectfully handed it over to Xiaohua. "This is the location of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. There are also some relatively secret records. Senior, please take it. Junior does not have a deep relationship with the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. Junior's token may be useful, but compared to Senior's strength, Junior's token is only the light of autumn fireflies. I dare not take it out and embarrass myself." "And General Sun is considerate." Xiaohua took the jade eyes and looked at it, then put it away. "This Junior will take his leave." Sun Jian bowed again, asking, "May I ask if Junior can meet the Fortune Gate's junior brothers again?" "Of course." Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror, and a beam of light descended, sucking Sun Jian into it. After a while, Sun Jian was released from the Shenhua continent. At this time, Sun Jian had already put aside his feelings for Xiaohua, and he bowed to bid farewell to Xiaohua. He then urged the auspicious cloud to fly somewhere. The Thunderbolt Immortal also came out from Shenhua continent. He looked worriedly in the direction Sun Wu flew in and asked, "Mithriya Buddha is now a Buddha. No one knows his true form except for us. But fellow Taoist, if you let Sun Jian out of the Great Snow Mountain, wouldn't you be giving him something to use against you? Hee, how can there be an impenetrable wall in this world? If he was worried about Sun Jian, he might as well not let him out. As long as he was let out, there was a possibility that the information would be leaked. Sun Jian is a loyal and righteous person, and he has a good relationship with us Fortune Gate disciples. How can we not give him freedom?" Xiaohua said with a smile. "Moreover, even if the Mahavairakana revered one wants to hide any karma of the 3 continents, it's impossible for him to do it flawlessly. Moreover, the Mithriya Buddha revered one's attainment of the fruit is open and above board. Why should we be afraid of revealing any clues?" "Haha, that's true. We have no ulterior motives. What are we afraid of? The Thunderbolt Immortal laughed and said, however, Sun Jian's words reminded I of something. Since we have returned to the 3 continents, we should plan for the future. Although we are not afraid of the Immortal Palace, if the Immortal Palace makes a move, we can't not be on guard. Okay, Xiaohua nodded. Let's bury a chess piece in the Pure Land world first. Hee, I have the same idea. The Thunderbolt Immortal chuckled and followed Xiaohua. The two of them flew for several days and saw a place with beautiful scenery. Within the range of their divine senses, there were few signs of human habitation. The two of them looked at each other, and there was a meaningful smile in their eyes. Without needing Xiaohua to do anything, the Thunderbolt Immortal pulled out 30,000 Fortune Gate disciples from the Shenhua mainland and gave them some instructions. There was no need for Xiaohua and the Thunderbolt Immortal to say anything, and the 30,000 disciples began to set up the formation. The disciples who could come out from the Shenhua mainland were all nascent soul cultivators and above, and each of them had the strength to establish a country in the 3 continents. Among the 30,000 disciples, the one with the highest cultivation had already reached the 6th grade, the Void Refinement Realm. Their strength was enough to make Xiaohua feel reassured. Therefore, after setting up the formation, Xiaohua did not delay. He took out the Kunlun mirror and circulated his magic power to release Fu Jiwen and the other disciples. The Fortune Gate disciples had already learned from Sun Jian that they had returned to the 3 continents. When they came out, their faces were filled with joy. After the disciples greeted each other, each of them took a deep breath, as if the air in the 3 continents was fresh and warm. Xiaohua smiled and said, after several twists and turns, Master has finally brought all of you back safely. I believe General Sun has already told all of you that it has only been 200 years since we left. What we have experienced this time is truly unimaginable. Just from the eyes of others, your strength has indeed increased by an unimaginable amount. This is all thanks to Master. Fu Jiwen and Lu Yi were the first to bow in answer. Seeing that the other disciples were about to bow and thank Xiaohua, Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, you don't need to be so polite. Master is your master. If there are any benefits, I will naturally leave them for all of you. Moreover, if you follow Master out other than opportunities, there will also be calamities. All of you have passed the test of time, which proves that Master has chosen all of you correctly. Master is very comforted. Master called all of you out today to prepare for your return to the hidden immortal mainland, to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate. However, before I let all of you go back, Master wants to hear your thoughts. What plans do you have for the future? Lu Yi and Yu Zhongqiuan had long been the heads of a family. How could they not understand what Xiaohua was thinking? The two of them glanced at each other, bowed and said, Master should know our temperament, but please rest assured. In the past 200 years, Senior Brother Xiong, Senior Brother Li and Senior Brother Lan have contributed a lot to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate. Although we are fortunate enough to have higher cultivation than our 3 senior brothers, we will not covet some of the Fortune Gate's positions. Wang Bianfei smiled and said, other than following Master to cultivate, disciple doesn't care about anything else. Master can rest assured. Yuanya looked at Xiaohua without any intention to speak. Fu Jiwen also smiled and said, Master, disciple is a Confucian cultivator. We won't fight for power with Senior Brother Xiong and the others. You can rest assured. Actually, Xiaohua nodded, looking at his disciples and said with a smile, this old master knows your temperament, so I'm very relieved. However, it is precisely because you are Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, Tao sects, sword cultivators, and the dragon tribe that Master is a little worried. The 3 mainlands' forces are intertwined, and you might be used by them. For example, Jianghong, if the Heavenly Abodes River Dragon tribe is in trouble and asks for your help, how can Louis not help? This Louis looked at Jianghong, and both of them showed a difficult expression. Master Fu Jiwen smiled and said, disciple and the others are in the 3 mainlands. It is inevitable that some karma will arise. It is impossible to remain untainted. Isn't Master often troubled by these matters? Disciple can't guarantee that we won't be involved in the 3 mainlands' grievances, but Disciple can guarantee that we will put the Fortune Gate's interests first. Yes, disciple will definitely put the fortune gate's interests first. All the disciples answered in unison. Xiao Hua nodded with satisfaction, then added, as long as you all have this intention, Master can rest assured. Also, I want to say that this experience is unprecedented. You guys have experienced the ruins and the primeval wasteland continent. I wonder how you guys feel about it. If you are not strong enough, it's better not to go. Yuanya answered honestly. Wang Bianfei laughed and said, there are so many treasures in the upper realm. Disciple regrets not taking a few more cosmos bags. If Master has any extra, why don't you give Disciple some more? Ha ha ha, all the disciples burst into laughter. Forget about the ruins. The desolate mainland was really full of treasures, so many that they were dazzled. What Wang Bianfei said was definitely what they were thinking. When everyone stopped laughing, Fujiwen's heart suddenly moved. Looking at Xiao Hua's half-smile, he seemed to have understood something. He bowed and said, Master, Disciple has never been to the ruins and desolate mainland, so Disciple didn't know what the upper realm was like, and didn't have much confidence in Disciple's cultivation. Now that Disciple has seen the upper realm, Disciple knows how vast it is, and has returned to the three mainlands. Although this is Disciple's hometown, Disciple already feels that this place is too narrow. Disciple already has a goal in Disciple's cultivation, and Disciple is confident that Disciple will reach this goal. Disciple will not be burdened by the three mainlands' worldly affairs and ruin Disciple's foundation. And Jiwen is right. Do you all understand? Xiao Hua nodded, and his gaze was like a bolt of lightning as he looked at everyone. Lu Yi and the others came to a sudden understanding when they heard this, and they finally understood what Xiao Hua wanted to say. All of them bowed and answered. Don't worry, Master. Disciple completely understands. Otherwise, wouldn't this trip to the upper dimensions have been wasted? With this experiential training, Disciple's vision should be much higher than the three mainlands' cultivators. Xiao Hua said, your cultivation will definitely surpass the majority of the three mainlands' cultivators. Therefore, Master doesn't want to see Disciple's cultivation delay because of some worldly affairs. Of course, Disciple's cultivation isn't a smooth sailing matter. No matter if it's in the ruins, desolate mainland, or the three mainlands, Disciple and the others still have a lot of distractions. However, Disciple's goal must be firm. Chapter 4291. Actually, it's not just you, even Master has a hard time getting out of the quagmire of these mundane affairs. Although cultivation is a personal matter, it is also a sex matter. For the Fortune Gate, for the Tao sect, Master has to leave more means. The mountain range under your feet, and the busy disciples, is also a Fortune Gate that Master wants to build in the Pure Land. In the future, Master will also establish a sect in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, and even other places. Hihi Fujiwen laughed. With the number of Fortune Gate disciples on the Shenhua continent, it's possible to build 10 more Fortune Gates. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes at Fujiwen and said, do you think Master is willing to build so many sects? If possible, Master would rather you cultivate in the Shenhua continent and not come out. But in reality, you will definitely be like this old man in the future, reaching a bottleneck in your cultivation, and having no choice but to ascend to the immortal world. Master also has to consider for you as soon as possible. Lu Yi and the others naturally understood Xiao Hua's painstaking efforts and bowed. Subsequently, Xiao Hua left Jiang Hong and Lu Yi behind. The other disciples each led 2,000 disciples back to the soaring Dragon Mountain range on the hidden immortal continent to support the Fortune Gate led by Xiong Yi and the other disciples. However, when the disciples were flying away, Yuanya was a little bashful and actually whispered to the disciples he led to leave first. He wanted to return to the Shenhua continent first. Xiao Hua glanced at Yuanya in bewilderment. He did not understand what was going on. Even the Thunderbolt Immortal was bewildered. However, Xiao Hua did not say anything. He shook the Kunlun mirror and collected Yuanya. Then Yu Zhongquan and the others left first. When Jiang Hong and Lu Yi saw that Xiao Hua had left them behind, they couldn't help but feel anxious. After Yu Zhongquan and the others left, they hurriedly knelt in the air and begged for forgiveness. Master, disciple knows his mistake, please punish Master. And Xiaohua didn't know what they were talking about, but his face was still as calm as water. He asked indifferently, "Since you know, then tell me, what did you do wrong?" Lu Yi knew Xiaohua's temper, and without waiting for Jiang Hong to speak, he had already explained the reason. It turned out that the Yu clan and the Lu clan of Shenhua continent already had some grudges. In order to compete for the title of the #1 aristocratic clan of Shenhua continent, they had fought countless times. Previously, Lu Yi and Yu Zhongquan had also mentioned this matter to Xiaohua, but Xiaohua didn't care. He only felt that since it was a place with people, there would be conflicts. Although the ancestors of the Yu family and the Lu family were martial brothers, with so many branches and leaves in the family, it was inevitable that their closeness to each other would deteriorate. Fighting was also inevitable, as long as it wasn't too excessive. This time, Lu Yi's report caused Xiaohua's expression to change again. This was because a descendant of the dragon clan of the Lu clan had been defeated by a disciple of the Yu clan because of his bravery. Moreover, this descendant of the dragon clan didn't openly challenge him again. Instead, he used poison to poison this disciple and nearly 100 people from the Yu clan's side branches to death. Although the actions of the dragon clan's descendants were very secretive, there were no secrets in this world. After the truth was found out by the other branches of the Yu clan, they gathered nearly 1,000 people to attack the Lu clan, a branch of the dragon clan. The two clans engaged in a chaotic battle, and another 400 people were killed or injured. In the end, this matter alarmed Yu Zhongquan and Lu Yi. The two of them used thunderous means to suppress this chaotic battle, and even sentenced the descendant of the dragon clan to death. Of course, this matter was suppressed, but the rift between the two clans seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Yu Zhongquan and Lu Yi didn't dare to report this matter to Xiaohua. They wanted to wait until the Thunderbolt Immortal was in a good mood to tell him first, then report to Xiaohua. But today, Xiaohua actually returned to the 3 continents and even sent out a group of disciples, leaving Lu Yi and his wife alone. Lu Yi had a guilty conscience and immediately confessed. Hearing this, Xiaohua's face was already ashen. However, just as he was about to get angry, the Thunderbolt Immortal smiled and transmitted a message. "Fellow Taoist, don't forget about the heavenly demon. Similarly, don't forget about the fight between the Taoist and Confucian cultivators on the hidden immortal continent. Don't forget about the crushing and killing between the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators." Alas, Xiaohua sighed. He understood what the Thunderbolt Immortal meant. If there were no humans on the Shenhua continent, then it would be fine. But since there were humans, how could there be no fighting and killing? Moreover, he also put the heavenly demon into the space. "Wait for me to get up." Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and helped the two of them up. He said, "Since you two have already dealt with this matter, Master won't say anything else. The population of the Shenhua continent is already large enough, and our fortune gate also has countless disciples. Master can't manage your descendants, but you two are absolutely forbidden from killing each other within the next 3 generations." Seeing this, Jiang Hong hurriedly replied, "Master, please don't worry about this. The relationship between us senior and junior brothers is very good. There definitely won't be any gap between us. On the Shenhua continent, other than the Lu family and the Yu family, are there any other families?" Xiaohua slightly nodded and asked. "There are no other families among this disciple's senior and junior brothers, and there are a few among the 3rd and 4th generation disciples, but they are all useless." Jiang Hong replied, knowing everything like the back of her hand. "Then let's support some," Xiaohua reminded in a bad mood. "In such a big Shenhua continent, there are only 2 aristocratic families playing around. Isn't it too lonely?" "Yes, this disciple understands." Jiang Hong was stunned. She didn't expect Xiaohua to give such an order. However, Xiaohua's next sentence reminded her. "If you don't know what to do, go and ask your martial uncle Wen Chu. Confucian cultivators are very good at forming alliances, and even sowing discord is very good." "Yes." Jiang Hong lowered her head and answered. "Other than this, Master has another matter that I might need the 2 of you. That's why I asked you to stay," Xiaohua finally said. "You two return to the Shenhua continent and wait there." Subsequently, Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and sent Jiang Hong and Lu Yi into the space. Fellow Taoist. After receiving the two, Xiaohua was a little impatient and asked the Thunderbolt Master. The development of the matter seems to be out of my control. Fellow Taoist doesn't stay in the space often, so you don't know about these things. The Thunderbolt Master laughed and said, in fact, this kind of thing happens every day on the Shenhua continent. At first, I was just as confused as you were, but as I watched, I began to realize something. The so-called control doesn't mean you can control everything in the space, but you can control the general trend and direction of the space. As long as there is no world-ending disaster, no large-scale blood sacrifice and so on, it's fine. We are not gods, so it's impossible for us to control all the details. Oh, of course, perhaps in the future, when fellow Taoist's divine ability reaches a certain level, you can also control such details, then we'll talk about it again. Development is always a trend. Xiaohua nodded. If the space was the same as before, with only spiritual herbs and no people, you and I wouldn't have so many opportunities, and neither of us would be satisfied. The space will always develop, and our strength must also change and improve accordingly. Fellow Taoist, please work hard. The Thunderbolt Master smiled and said, the current space is no longer the space I know. Therefore, fellow Taoists must also work hard. Xiaohua replied with a smile, then looked at the busy Fortune Gate disciples, and the smile on his face gradually faded. He let out a long sigh and fell silent. Why is fellow Taoist sighing? The Thunderbolt Master was puzzled. Naturally, it's because of the future of the Fortune Gate disciples in the space. Xiaohua said in a low voice, when the time comes, we can't send all of them from Shenhua continent to Hidden Immortal continent, right? Moreover, there are so many people on Shenhua continent, I can't send all of them out. When fellow Taoist ascends? The Thunderbolt Master asked. Yes. Xiaohua nodded. Why can't it be like now? The Thunderbolt Master was still confused. Just stay on Shenhua continent with them. On Shenhua continent? I'm afraid that without ascension, it will affect their cultivation. Xiaohua replied. Moreover, we have never been to the immortal world, who knows what it's like? Since there are no problems in the higher realms, what's the problem in the immortal world? Speaking of which, I still don't want to take the risk if I'm not confident. So you want to expand the Fortune Gate in the 3 continents? Yes, it's a backup plan just in case. It's really troublesome. The Thunderbolt Master smiled bitterly. As the saying goes, success depends on space, failure depends on space. I don't need to think about this matter. I should go and set up the transmission array. Alright, while speaking, Xiaohua brings the Thunderbolt Venerable and flies in another direction. After flying for tens of thousands of miles, Xiaohua saw a place with clear mountains and clear water. He released his Buddhist awareness and looked around for a long time before asking, fellow Taoist Thunderbolt, what do you think of this place? Very good. The Thunderbolt Master also released his divine sense and looked around before saying, this place is more secluded. It's the most suitable place to set up a transmission array. After saying that, the Thunderbolt Master raised his head and looked at the sky again. He saw that the dark red clouds above the snowy mountain had already moved here with the two of them. The dark clouds had already become somewhat transparent, and streaks of dragon-like lightning gradually appeared. Fellow Taoist, do you need I to help you? The Thunderbolt Master asked worriedly. There's no need. If I don't want to attract the Thunder Sound Temple's attention, I can release my divine sense now. Xiaohua said nonchalantly. It won't be too late to deal with this matter after I arrive at a safe place. After saying that, Xiaohua activated his escape technique, and the two of them flew towards the depths of the earth. When they arrived at a certain place, Xiaohua released his puppets and ordered them to open up space. Xiaohua then handed the Grand Cosmos teleportation token to the Thunderbolt Master, and said, I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to set up the transmission array here. This Grand Cosmos teleportation token has the Black Wind Ridges transmission array's divine sense mark. Fellow Taoist can just set up the transmission array between the 2 continents. Rest assured, fellow Taoist, I can even set up a transmission array that can pass through the barrier between the 2 continents. This simple transmission array between the 2 continents is simply a piece of cake for me. The Thunderbolt Master bragged a little as he received the Grand Cosmos teleportation token. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.